All right, everybody, welcome to episode 15 of Top Bin Talks. I'm one of your co-hosts, Adam Jones, alongside Kwame Awua, or as he's known in Starbucks, Kevin.
Kevin, keep it simple for the boys, man. I'm telling you, I'm 27 years old, and I've been helping people pronounce my name, how to spell my name for 27 years. I'm over it. I'm tired of correcting people. So, we just gonna keep it simple now. Kevin. I don't look
It
like
is
a Kevin.
Kevin.
I don't care to be Kevin. It's either Kevin or KJ, but like that, I'll just go with Kevin. See, it's the first thing that comes to my mind. I have to keep it a K though.
I have to.
Everybody laughs.
It's actually so funny because I know other people that do that too, where they're just like, if I have to tell someone like a barista, it's like,
yeah. And then at the same time, they be like, pardon? It's like, all right, I'm not repeating it again. Like, it's like, nah, come on, Kevin.
all right, man. Hey, let's jump right into this. The big news, Canadian Championship, first round done. TSS, the very first League One team to beat a professional team in the competition. We talked a little bit about it before this, like doing some predictions and stuff, and we weren't sure this was the year that maybe a storyline like that could happen. And it is.
Honestly, it's unbelievable. I didn't get to watch a full game, but I watched like the highlights of the game. And one, I don't know whether or not Valor should be kicking themselves in the foot or TSS Rovers should be hyped, because obviously they should be hyped and the fan base and everything should be hyped. But this what happens when you underestimate a team. Like literally,
Definitely.
like this, and this is how it happens in the EPL when they do FA Cup and all that stuff. Those Cinderella stories, like even when Wrexham was going crazy to the quarterfinals or something like that, lost to Sheffield. It's like you can't underestimate any games. And those Premier League guys, they have reasons too, because they play like 70 games a year. But Valor, bro, your season just started. Like you could have put out your strongest 11. Like you played one league
Your
game.
second game. That was your second game of the year.
Hey, shout out to Pelosi though. Former
Polisi?
CPL guy at Polisi, yeah. He was at Halifax Wanderers, if I'm not mistaken, right?
He was at Pacific.
Because he has a brother. He has a brother.
Yeah, Marcello's so Marcello was at Halifax. He's now at Valor, but he was injured, so he didn't come out. He didn't travel for the game.
Oh wow! And now his brother's like, yeah, I whooped your team's ass, bro. That's crazy. Yeah, he was in his bag that day though, finishing impeccable. And like 3-0 is like if it was like a 2-1 or a 1-0 but like these guys came out flying and they cooked Valor, absolutely cooked them. So it's like,
yeah, I was there. I was live. My brother played. My brother was one of the center midfielders. He was in Team of the Week. He was one of the guys in Team of the Week. Him, Eric Edwardson, and Mateo were all Team of the Week guys, which is awesome. Which is fucking so cool to see. Like
they deserve it, man.
They deserved it. They were so good.
Yeah.
But it was one of those games where again, like TSS can kind of prepare a little bit for Valor. Like Mark's been there for a while. DeSantos has his way of playing. Like they can watch film and prepare. Valor have no idea how to prepare for TSS. And now going to the next round, neither do Pacific. So it's kind of
they
interesting.
Can just go based off the Valor game.
But can they?
That's not enough.
Exactly, right? Like there's no kind of fluidity to how they attack. It's more or less like we're gonna take what's given to us and we're gonna fucking go. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where that's the part that makes it really, really difficult for Valor in that game of going, we have our way of playing, and the other team's just going, we're gonna take what you give us. And so it's that really difficult thing. And it was good because TSS started off really nervous. It was just a lot of nervous energy, which you would have, right? And they got settled in first 20 or so, and then Mateo scores, and it just calmed them down. It just calmed them right down. And
I think there's something about it, and you can ask your brother about it. Like even when they scored, you're like, then you start to get more confidence where you're like, okay, these guys are not as good as we thought they were gonna be. So then you start playing your game. Like I'm sure your brother came into the game. Your brother obviously knows like he's good enough, but he was probably like, you know what, you have more respect for them than they have for you. So like, but then once you score, you're like, you know what, F these guys, and then you just go in your bag.
Yeah, and also like, so I was talking to some other people about this. Like my brother's the only one I think in that team who's been in a situation similar to that. So when we were at SFU, we had a week where we played TFC2 and the Whitecaps. And TFC2, Raheem Edwards, Chris Manella, Liam Fraser, who's now a national team player. Skylar Thomas just signed his first deal. Mark Anthony Kay, Alex Bono. Like, that's the team we played against. We had a striker who was getting cut. We had 12 guys, and we had a guy who had graduated, like he was a senior, playing right midfield, who was a right back. That was our team. We fucking drew 0-0 and should have beat TFC in that game because we are gonna defend our ass. Like, it was that nervous type of energy again. But it was like we're gonna take what's given to us. Like, you know what I mean? And then that same week we played the Whitecaps with Alfonso Davies and Marco Bustos and Kyle Gregg, Daniel Haber, Brett Levis, Sim DeWitt, like Cole Seiler, like all these guys again the same week. We drew 0-0 again. And it was like he was the only one who's been in that situation of going, we're supposed to get smashed. We're supposed to.
So you have nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose. I know I can play with these guys, kind of thing. Like, I've done it before, you know, like that. And Mateo obviously coming back from CPL going, I can fucking play with these guys. You know, and then the second he scores, bang, calms them down. They get the second one right afterwards, and they're flying into halftime. But the craziest thing to me is that Valor didn't change their style of play. They didn't fucking change at all. They made subs. That was it. What the fuck?
That goes back to like what Richard was talking about. It's just the coaching. I'm sure like DeSantos is a great coach, I'm sure, but like the level of coaching might be too much of a disparity to the IQ of the players on the team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like sometimes Bobby be saying stuff, like even my past, like before, or Patrick Vieira, they be saying stuff, but like the guys that are like first year pros or whatever, they won't be able to get it like that. Whereas like Becker, me, stuff like we don't ask how to do the drill twice. We don't act like we know exactly, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just like those in-game adjustments, if you don't do them right away and you try to work through them 20, 30 minutes, especially a team that's already 2-0 up, that doesn't mind parking the bus now because they're 2-0 up, you're going to have a hard time. Like, it's like, yo, you got 30 minutes to score 2 goals. And these guys are grown men. Grown men are not just going to like sit down and be like, yo, you guys walk all over.
And that's the thing, man. Like, that was one of those things where that was a team of fucking men. Right? They're all in their mid to late 20s, that team.
Yeah.
And so
like,
they're
not just going to sit down and die. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, that's what I've really actually liked so far about the Can Champ when they have expanded now. Is that, again, like, I think the first year you had Vaughn, who gave Halifax a run the first year and stuff. Like, you've had this now with these League One teams who've gone in and they've genuinely created something, and they've made these games. And no, man, it was, and honestly, being there was fucking phenomenal. It was great. And then I think like the one thing I would sit there and just like, upon a little bit of reflection with Valor, is it is their second game of the year. It's not like this is a mid-season competition for them. So they're still working through their start of the season kinks, right? So that's another thing that kind of makes, I think, going forward into the next couple of years, like, that's almost something to consider here a little bit, going, oh, that adds another layer to this competition, number one. And number two,
it makes it a lot more even playing field.
It might be more parity in it, and there might be more upsets, which is really cool to see. So no, it was awesome. Obviously, like, there's so many guys on that TSS team that played well. And you know, they get another crack at it. They go to the island now. Pacific is the next one. They beat Cavalry in a penalty shootout.
Damn, yeah. That was a dope game too as well. All the West Coast games, because it's at a different time zone, obviously 3 hours behind. Like, it's kind of tough for me to follow, but at the same time, going back to the TSS Rovers game, it reminds me of when, like, 2019 when Calvary beat Vancouver Whitecaps. Like, you beating the upper team gives you the opportunity to showcase yourself. That's how Dominic Zator and Joel Waterman were able to get looks from playing with Calvary. You know what I mean? And then just like how we played against Montreal and ended up going to penalties with one of their strongest sides. And that's when they were like in their prime, like Nancy ball. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, we look at it from CPL to the MLS, but like, these are stories where it's like, maybe next time it could be, I don't know, Calgary Foothills or anything, because it's obviously affiliated with Calgary, but I don't know if they're allowed. You know what I mean? Like, just other, you know, or Vaughn going to be like York United and then playing like how they played Montreal recently.
Yeah.
So like, even that's still kind of cool, even though they didn't get the result that they wanted. Like, the brand new coach, like brand new players. Some of the players, one of the players, Raheem Rose, just finished playing the Nationals for the Canadian Futsal Championship, flew to Montreal to play with these guys the next day. So it's like you understand. Obviously, there's parity with Montreal and the League One team, but the CPL and League One team is not that far off. A lot of the guys came from the League One teams from last year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like again, one of those things is that's exciting is that this is an opportunity to show your potential.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think for me, that's what I'm looking at most of the TSS guys again. Like, hey, can you guys do it again now? Because I think that's the one thing that I would sit there and I would look at and go, okay, you've done it once. You have to continuously do it. And if those guys can continuously do it, and now rather than showing that's potential, no, like that's consistency, they're gonna be in the league. Like this is your chance to showcase yourself and show that you can consistently do it, rather than wow, their potential is really good for that. But if that's not going to be their consistency, that's where it gets more difficult to sign them, right? So that's the exciting thing, man. They get another chance to go do it. They get another chance to go showcase themselves and go play.
And the thing is, it's not even like obviously you're still playing with house money. So it's like as long as you put in a good performance. Like now we're getting to the era where like there's video. People can tell if you're a good footballer, if the game's good, if you're playing a good game. It's not like where you see the result, you're like, this team is shit. Like if you go and lose 3-0, I'm not saying to Pacific. Let's say they were playing an MLS team or they were playing, even if they played Pacific and they go and lose 3-0, people are gonna be like, okay, this team's trash. But it's like, nah, you could watch the game. What kind of team is Pacific? They were in CONCACAF Champions League last year. Oh, you lost 3. Okay, so then there's levels to this. So it's like, okay, you were supposed to lose. How do we watch the game? And then you can see how the game goes. Film technology is great now, so you can see if guys are actually good and know what they're doing on the field. Results don't really matter when it comes to obviously being able to go to the next level. So I'm happy for them. I'm happy for the Canadian Championship as well. Like I watched some of the Forge and the Laval game as well. It was an entertaining game. Obviously, Forge is going to be Forge. I watched some of the York and who they play again?
Vancouver FC.
Vancouver FC. They ended up winning that game, no?
Yeah, soft penalty, 6th minute.
Yeah,
super soft, which is tough, man.
I watched
it's
that
tough
game,
for a new
tough.
Franchise, right? Like your first time, your first crack at it, and to concede a goal like that or concede a penalty shot like that, like that's always tough.
They had a redemption a couple days later, so I guess that works out totally fine. But yeah, like all in all, I mean, it was good quality. You could tell the quality of each league is getting better. And to build off that, the CPL announces that CPL teams now have affiliates within the League One Canada umbrella, which is great.
It's awesome, man.
I don't know why it didn't start off from the beginning. Like you already knew what teams were getting where they were getting their players from. Like it was like, come on.
Yeah,
like,
I think part of it is you needed to get it more across the country, though. I think that was part of it, right? So like with League One BC being in its now 2nd year, like this is their 5th year, right? League One Alberta was just announced. So when you just had the PLSQ, which is now League One Quebec and League One Ontario, like it's hard
tough
to launch that.
Yeah.
Right then and there. So no, like that's
League One BC, League One Alberta. That's
yeah, exactly. So that part's really awesome. Like it's a good step in the right direction. Again, like another wrinkle with that is you can't have NCAA players playing for you. So when some of those guys come back for the summer, that's the only wrinkle there. That's the ones who are affiliated.
NCAA's playing
you
where
can't have
League One?
No, you can't have them be a part, I guess, of they can't get called up.
Oh, they can't get called up.
They can't get called in and do that stuff.
The NCAA players that are playing in League One can't get called up to the CPL teams. Okay.
Yeah. So that was a wrinkle because I guess people were asking like, why isn't TSS one of the teams? Well, they have a number of SFU players.
Yeah.
So that was a big reason.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I mean, that's still good. Like I said, like when I was on Forge, there was a lot of guys that signed like those developmental contracts. I know there's still maybe this takes away the U21 threshold minute rule. Maybe that I mean, if I have a U21 or a couple U21s and they're not playing, I could send them to get more meaningful minutes instead of just playing them just to play them to fulfill my U21 minutes. Send it playing garbage minutes, they could play more meaningful minutes.
Yeah.
Like if I'm winning 4-0, I'm gonna go put him on in the last 10 minutes when the other team is not trying anymore. You know what I mean? I'd rather him go play. Hopefully they can find a way how like that can fulfill the U21 minutes regardless. You know what I mean? Like a transfer
100%.
thing.
Yeah. And I mean, I hope it gets to the point where we do away with U21 minutes.
Yeah,
Like it shouldn't. It's like it's not a
if you're
developmental
good
league.
enough,
Like,
you're good enough.
we want to get to the point where this is a fucking proper pro league. It's not a developmental league. Like, we want it to be a certain standard.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, like, you're gonna get those kids minutes when you can anyway. It's not like you're not gonna do that if they're not good enough, right? Like, so yeah.
If you're good enough, if you're good enough, you're old enough, bro. That's how I think. Yeah, but
it's just the one thing I honestly, and the last thing I'll say on the TSS thing is, being from the West Coast, I fucking love that the first team to do it was a BC team, when fucking all the talk was Vaughan are gonna upset Montreal. Look at Montreal's in a bad vein of form.
You have to
all
think.
stuff.
You have
Like,
to think
oh
about
my god,
you have
man.
to think about the disparity though. Like, it's
I
like
get like
those
Joe. I
the
get
League One
Joey.
Ontario teams. Yeah,
I get
them,
Joey
but
and
those,
Chris are in the midfield, man, but they're not like,
yeah,
they're not at their peak any. Like, they're not at their peak. They're not training every day. Like, they're not what they
in
were
a
when they were in the
professional
league, right?
environment.
They're not in the professional environment anymore. It's you know, it would have been an awesome story, and I get that Montreal were in a horrendous vein of form, but come on, man.
Yeah, I just think the League One Ontario teams just have it like the worst, only because you have TFC and you have Montreal. Because before it wasn't, there was no PLSQ. Like you have Laval, but Laval wasn't anywhere close to Montreal. Most of the competitive teams were Forge, was a big name team, Montreal, TFC. So like they're about to play one of the top 3 teams. Like it's almost unfortunate, because like if you go by like rankings, who are the best teams, it'll be like TFC, Montreal, Vancouver, and then Forge. But then 3 of those top 4 you possibly play. So it's like, damn.
Yeah.
And
Which it's still like, honestly though, if you're Vaughn, you're like, fuck, this is awesome.
Yeah,
we get to go play in MLS
100%.
team. Fucking
100%.
who cares?
Yeah,
right.
100%.
You're playing with house money all of a sudden, right? And like, it would have been fucking unbelievable
if they beat Montreal. I think the coach would have got fired. Coach had you have to, bro. Have to.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it's fucking awesome, man. Like, and again, this is another year where now there's another storyline. You know, the first year was Cavalry beating the Whitecaps, which was awesome, and then obviously you had the 2 kind of COVID years there, which weren't great. But then you go out and you have what was it? Pacific beating Vancouver, beating the Whitecaps. The Whitecaps are the ones who've been on the fucking end of all of
it. And we almost beat Montreal 11 penalty shots.
And then there was that one where it's like right to the brink, man. Like, every single year, this is creating storylines, and it's creating these really cool narratives, and it's just fucking awesome to see. Because this is the one year I'll say this is the one year I was a little bit worried about it, where I was like, fuck, because Valor in preseason looked pretty good. I was like, oh, it's gonna be a tough one.
Preseason don't matter, bro. Preseason don't matter, yo.
Preseason
only matters for fitness.
TSS didn't look great in preseason either.
Yeah, but if you said Valor looked good in preseason, I feel like if you have a worse preseason, you always start off better. I always feel that way. I don't know why. Every team I played on, New York, St. Louis,
Forge must have amazing preseasons then. Just amazing.
The thing is, for 2019, we were cooking everyone in DR. Like 2020, we didn't really have preseason because COVID. 2021, we didn't even have a preseason, but we were away. Same type thing. But now we're talking about the opening games. I told you Forge was going to tie Calvary. I was like, nah, there's no way. These guys don't win. They don't win home openers. The first 3 games, I texted him because I'm in a group chat with like Dom and Tristan. I was like, bro, what's going on? He's like, bro, you know the drill. This happens every year. I was like, I know the drill, but I'm like, dog, we don't want to, like, y'all don't want to change? Like, everybody's
why would they change? They're just fucking like, what, 4 straight finals?
Yeah. Why change what's working? All right, man. I'm like, all right, yo, y'all got it, man. Y'all got it. He's like, you know what's about to happen. I was like, all right, yo, we'd be fine. But they won their cup game. Noah Jensen, top form.
Dude, he's on fire. Fucking hell. Shout out to him.
He before he got to Forge, him in college and at Oakland, he was unbelievable. He was like Mac Herman finalist.
Yeah, he was unbelievable, man. So it's awesome to see a guy like that come back and play, man. And you know,
like another Sigma dude. Easy, bro. Right. See, it's a plug-in, right. Bro. It's a plug-in. Vancouver FC losing their first game against York. Obviously, we touched base on it. The penalty shot, play later. That's a chance, but then they win their first game against York 2-1.
Good response, man. Good fucking response. come back. What is Mo doing?
No
What's he
idea.
what's he doing that close to his own goal, by the way? Was he playing center back?
Nah, sometimes he likes to drop deep and be a 6. No idea. No, don't ask me, man. I seen that. I said no more because that's the homie. I was like, no more. This wasn't the game to do it, yo.
You try and meg him on top of your own
Yeah.
18-yard box.
I said no more. Damn. Calvary against who they Pacific was it Pacific that they played?
Yeah,
Well?
they lost in what this week or
Yeah. Now who did they play in their home opener?
in their home opener? They played Forge. They tied.
Oh, tied. Why am I talking? Yeah, I'm chopped. Yeah, and then Halifax and Ottawa came to a draw. I got that wrong as well. So I'm 1 and 2. I got 2 wrong.
Yeah, you're 1 and 2.
Yeah,
just to go back for everyone else. We're doing our new little I guess predictions is what we'll call it.
Yeah.
Some game predictions. And so just on that first week, Kwame took Forge and Cavalry to tie. He took
Ottawa to win,
to beat Halifax, and then he took Arsenal to beat West Ham. Who
all of them tied.
All of them, yeah, exactly. All tied.
This is crazy, bro. Yeah. All of them tied. That's wild.
Yeah, so, I did a little bit better. I took Man United to beat Nottingham Forest, which they did. I took Pacific to beat Vancouver FC, which they did. Vancouver put forward a fucking hell of an effort too on the island. Their first game, they grinded, they battled, and it's good, man. Like that, you look at the 3 performances they put in so far. They're going to be competitive. They're going to work their asses off, which is what you have to do, man. You're a new franchise. You're trying to establish yourself in the league, and it's gonna be fucking hard. It's gonna be really fucking hard. And so they've definitely started on the right foot for sure. Because they're now 1 win, 1 tie, and
1 loss.
1 loss, right?
I mean,
they're one win, 2 losses. One win and 2 losses, including the Can Champ game to York. So, but they've all been close games. They've not been played off the park. They've not been, fucking dominated in any sense. Like they're going to be competitive this year, and they're going to have to work their way into the season. Like they're going to have to do a lot of work, and they're going to have to keep this up, and hopefully they find some fluidity here. And then the one I got wrong was York and Valor. I took York to win, and Valor smashed them.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. All home games too, no? York was at home, no?
No, yeah, York was at home, and Valor
that's what I mean.
York
played home 3 games, opening the Can Champ and against Vancouver FC again.
Yep.
Damn. Yeah, I mean, eventful week. I mean, we're gonna keep touching base on the CPL. 100 games for Tristan Borges. Shout out to you, Borges. That's 100 games with Forge, which is massive. Never thought you'd reach that because you were gone. I was like, this guy's not coming back. But hey, nice to have him back. Pillar for Forge FC. We have to. I think we should touch base on Forge FC's ex-general manager Kostas Smyrniotis becoming the VP, executive VP of this CPL.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Fucking good hire, man. Good fucking hire.
A lot of people are calling it mafia. I won't say it's not mafia, but I mean, if you want the best for the league, why not get the best team's best manager?
I think it's also like what they've built too, man. Like
in general, in Canada soccer
as well.
In general.
Like exactly. There is that side of it, man, where you have to look at, I think, it from a more holistic standpoint, right? Like look at what they've built.
Yeah.
I get where the narrative's coming from.
100%.
I think everyone does.
Everyone does, but you can't. The proof is in the pudding. From 20 years running, 15 years running.
Exactly.
Like, come on.
And that's coming from, and again, like you need to invest in good people.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing. Right. Like it's someone, and again, it's not like they're hiring someone who has no idea what they're doing now. Right. Like it's not like they've hired someone who doesn't really have the experience of how to build something like that. Like no, like
business or soccer acumen. You actually have a guy that's a real business guy.
Exactly.
Who means business, but also has a soccer background to back it up. So I mean,
exactly.
Yeah. Shout out to that. Anything else CPL related that we got?
Not too much, man. Just like obviously season just started and
Yeah.
it already you're seeing a little bit more parity. Pat seems to have
Hmm.
started off okay, man. Like Halifax are
Hmm.
playing. Mass Farron started fucking
Hmm.
brilliantly. He started
Scored against Forge.
Riley
Yeah.
Ferrarzo, team of the week
Yeah.
1, 2. A couple of League One guys stepping right out of League One, right in the
Yep.
starting lineup. Like
It goes to
it's fucking
show.
good, man.
I like that Halifax has followed almost like the Forge and Calvary process. You know why? Because they got Halifax, they got Patrice, and they allowed him to bring his guys. And the guys that he brought in, he knew that they would work hard for him, and they would like it would just be an immediate jump into like you already know what to do.
Well,
So
the
it's
thing is,
like,
Pat's
yeah,
he has an identity. He has a way he wants to
that's what I
play.
mean.
You have to
So
bring
then,
in guys who suit that and match it. And so if you have the backing from your
yeah,
owners to go,
owners,
hey,
you
this is
can
how I want to
get
play,
your
like
guys
that should be a part of the interview process, right? Like this is how I
exactly.
want to play. These are the guys I want to bring in. These are the types of guys I want to bring in. It shouldn't
Hmm.
fucking matter where they played last year. It
Hmm.
shouldn't.
And it's looking good, man. So shout out to those guys. Andre Rampersad, who recently got called in for the Trinidad and Tobago national team. I always thought he was a baller. I was like, yo, this guy's an unbelievable player for CPL.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised he's still there, but I guess he just never. He's getting treated well there, and I mean, sometimes it's not about going to. Sometimes it's about being comfortable and
Yeah.
enjoying your football. So shout
Yeah.
out to him as well.
If you're content, you're happy.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with staying where you're at,
Playing at
right?
a good
So
level, there's nothing wrong with that.
yeah.
What else we got? MLS. I mean, I know Vancouver hasn't played yet. Yesterday, TFC got spanked without Michael Bradley in the team. Got spanked by Philadelphia Union, who
Philly.
are one of the top
They're
three
a good
teams
team,
in the
man.
MLS. They're a
They're a
good
good
team,
team.
especially at home. They're a well-balanced team. They're a very athletic team. They literally just looked to hit Toronto on the counter because they knew Insigne wasn't going to defend. It was a midfield, Jonathan Osorio, Mark Anthony, and Brandon Cervania. They defended in a 4-4-2. Brandon Cervania and Jaquil. So physically, it's not the best midfield to go against Bedoya. Yeah, like those.
We're just
What's
gonna
his name?
fucking grind you
Yeah,
down.
exactly. They're gonna grind you down. They're gonna run back and for Wagner running up and down the left. Like it almost seems like if the ball doesn't get to Osorio, Richie, Bernadeschi, it's like nothing's happening with TFC.
Yeah, like
Um,
there's still a lot of moving pieces with that
mhm.
team. Like I think they're still trying to find
Health, health is a big
health
one.
big time. Health
Yeah.
is a huge one. But they're still trying to find, I think, their best way of playing.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like I think that's a huge thing for them right now. Shit, this thing
Because yeah,
froze. Fuck. Yeah, my whole screen's frozen right now. Is yours?
you're moving perfectly fine though on mine.
All right, well, we'll just keep going here. On here. It
Yeah,
says
it
recording. So.
still says recording. Yeah.
All right, yeah, we're back. Cool. Yeah, no, like I think they're still trying to find a bunch of fluidity right now. Like
Hmm.
they haven't been able to roll out the same type of lineup consistently, right? Like
Hmm.
now with Michael Bradley not being in there, it's just it's hard, man, when you have that group, when you have a brand
Matt
new group,
Hedges
man.
wasn't there yesterday too.
Yeah.
I mean, like I feel like everyone probably Richie's in his prime. Also, is probably at like I'd say he's in his prime because like I think you're out of your prime once you hit like 33, 34. Like that's when you're like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Also is his prime. Mark Anthony in his prime. Insigne and those guys, like for their quality, they're like MLS prime. You know what I mean? Like quality on the pitch. I'm not saying like prime, like Europe prime, but like Bernadeschi's still putting up numbers and stuff like that. But you would think all these guys on this team on the field, things would be working totally fine. Technical, athletic enough, like, but the ball moves. But then it's just like I'm watching the game. I don't think they have an identity, bro.
I
And you
think
would
that's a
think,
huge part. Like if you haven't been able to find
but
that
you would
yet,
think
you're kind of trying to
Bradley,
work through it.
every team he's had an identity. LAFC.
Yeah. Yeah, but like you had
I don't know
LAFC,
if
but
I don't know.
yet if
LAFC,
you
you
look at
kind of
if
just
you
had Vela. You had Vela and
but no,
Rossi that
that's
were
what I mean though.
just
You
like
only had Vela. You only had him, right? Like there wasn't like there was an Insigne and a Bernadeschi now to try and deal like you have this one, you have
both of
multiple
them.
superstars. So it's like trying to find identity within that. It's it's hard, man. Like I think that's one of the things that when you go through it and you start when you start thinking about those types of things and coaching and like, it's a
Yeah.
fucking hard job, man. It's a hard fucking job
Bro,
to try and truly find an identity that works for all these players when you're bringing in
it might.
these guys, you're paying them so much fucking money.
That's what I mean.
So much fucking money.
Their salary hits is like outrageous. It's out the park. So it's like you have to play all these guys because you're paying them so much money. But you're playing all these guys, but there doesn't seem you could tell who has chemistry with one another. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you could tell when you watch them, you're like, yeah, Richie, also Mark Anthony, Bernadeschi, all have like they're in sync. And then you have the other guys and Bradley. Then you kind of have the other guys that are just like either brand new to the team, still in their playing their ways, but they're technical enough so they fit in. So like
Maybe
you
they're
know
new
what
to the city and they're still trying to get comfortable
yeah.
living life and stuff. Like, fuck, man, it's
I
hard.
think they just need to come down. Yo, when things don't go right, what I've noticed, when you just focus on defense, bro, you can't lose the game if the other team don't score.
Yeah,
they literally, it's like, bro, I
big
know we
time.
have all these attackers and stuff like that, but dog, you can't lose the game if we don't score. Start from there.
No, exactly, man. Like, and that's kind of and again, it's on paper. You're like, why isn't this working? But sometimes
Yeah,
it just doesn't. Like, fuck,
doesn't.
sometimes it just doesn't work, and it's shitty. And then you have to try and find a new way to do it. Like, and having to do that on the fly with not just it's huge. It's huge news in MLS because of the salary cap hits and because of who they brought in. And sometimes it just doesn't work. So you have to try and fix it on the fly now. Like, fuck, man, it's hard. It's hard.
Talking about something that hasn't been working, Montreal, I mean, they won the Canadian Championship game and they won their game yesterday. I guess
Yep.
2 wins in a row, give the coach a little bit of breathing room, but still trading away Kamal Miller, getting Bryce Duke and Lassiter gives them a more dynamic attack, I guess, because Duke is really good on the
Yeah.
ball, more creative. Lassiter is more direct, but you trade away one of your best 1v1 defenders. I mean, Waterman and Camacho are still there, and then now they have to figure out like how they're gonna bring all this together.
Yeah, man. And again, I think like you look at so losing Kamal now, you've lost Alistair, you lost Jordy Mihailovic, who was your best player last year. You've lost Kai Kamara, you've lost your coach, you've lost Nancy. Like, you're not replacing them. And that, I think, is like the fucking hardest part about it. And what's so difficult is that, like, you know, you look at what Alistair's doing at Celtic, it's fucking incredible. It's fucking awesome.
What Kamal did in the World Cup, and
what Kamal did at the
World Cup. What he's
Cup.
gonna do in Miami.
Yeah, like those are hard players to replace. And you know, and again, losing Nancy was fantastic. The job he did was phenomenal, right? And now, you know, you had a way of playing, but you have a new coach that comes in. You know, he's got a different stuff.
System.
He's got his own thing. And so it was always going to be a really hard transition. I think that's why there was that narrative around the Can Champ, right? That's why it was. And it's good to see them start to get their feet though. They're kind of getting settled now. Obviously the game when they played Vancouver was early red card didn't help. But they got smashed. And then it seems like they're starting to find their feet here and kind of trudge along, which is good. It's way better for us, right? The more of these teams, more of the Canadians playing well and doing this is the better. So
better for the national team and better for everything else, man. That's what's up. I think I read somewhere. I'm talking about national teams. Did one of our women's national, other than Janine Becky, did someone else get hurt?
Edisha Buchanan got hurt.
Yes.
She missed out on the
last games, right?
The games against France, yeah.
Yeah.
The games in France. She missed out on those. So hopefully she's able to recover for the World Cup.
100%. I mean, wishing her nothing but a speedy recovery. I mean, I'm injured right now, so I only know how frustrating that shit could be. Honestly, the best way to start recovery is obviously always a positive mind, bro. And I think that I'm a positive person because shit could be a lot worse, right?
For sure.
But yeah, Khadijah Buchanan missed out on games, and obviously focal point of their back line. Once a Ballon d'Or finalist, which is crazy to me. I was like, damn, bro, I can't believe I know
Awesome,
this girl,
man.
bro. That's awesome, bro. Any men's national team? Alfonso Davies pulled up yesterday, apparent
Hurt
hamstring injury
10 minutes
with
in.
Bayern Munich.
That was like the one thing that I look at him. I'm like, fuck, he's so fast, man.
That's
Hamstrings have got to be.
I know a lot of people that are like that happened with Chris, that happened with Johnny Grant. That it happened like once you start, he was younger before, so like to back in like you could run all that, but once you get the mileage on your legs and stuff like that, I'm not saying you got to change the way you play, but it's like a kind of like a pick and choose your moments. Remember when De Bruyne
Yeah,
first came to Man City? He used to be gliding with the ball 18 to 18 over almost every counterattack. Now he's kind of like, you see him chilling a little bit more. Like you don't have, once you get the mileage and the amount of games that Bayern Munich are playing every year, like
I think it's
you
also
kind of have,
you're adding on to right after COVID, where you've slammed
yeah.
games in, more games in. The World
Mm.
Cup being when it was, you have to
I say
cram all
that
these other
too.
games in. Like,
You playing 100
luckily for
games in a year and a half.
yeah, like luckily for the only thing that was lucky for obviously Bayern Munich is they do get the Christmas break. They did take a break after the World Cup and everything, which is good for them. But again, it just creates more congestion in their schedule,
In the
right?
schedule.
With Bayern Munich, they're always going to be in the knock. It's weird if they're not in
Knock of
the
the
quarters or
Champions League
semifinals of the Champions League. It's weird if they're not getting to the final of the DFB
Cup,
Pokal, which they're not.
which they not. Yep.
Tuchel has started horrendously.
And this eliminated 3 competitions, and now they're not even in first in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, like and so it's one of those things where maybe that's the little bit of wisdom that he's going to get out of this, right? Is okay, rather than trying to go every single time, I pick and choose my moments to go.
Exactly.
But and again, like that kind of stuff happens, man. Maybe maybe it is more prehab stuff. Maybe he's in the gym a little bit more, working on those things, doing the injury, way more injury prevention stuff, and focusing
maybe it's
on
not
that.
as serious as we think.
Maybe it's just a little twinge and a tweak.
And he's just like, never mind. He's like, nah, let me just go sit down.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not too serious. Hopefully he's not out for all that long.
Yeah, prayers up to him. Another Canadian, Jonathan David, 21 goals, cooking in Ligue 1, second place to only Kylian and Mbappe. I mean, yeah, penalties are goals too. Yeah, bro. 21 goals. I feel like every year, the first year he's with a team, he gets like average. Like, I'm not saying average, but like he'll get like 10, 15. But then the next year, he always explodes. It happened with Ghent, and then now it's happening here. And like, you can tell, like, the confidence is just oozing, bro. It's oozing, bro. You don't, everything you touching is going in. So it's calm, bro.
It'll be really interesting to see where he goes next. Like, really interesting to see where he goes.
I'll probably have the tea before anyone, so I'll let you know, but off camera. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, but I'll
screenshot it and send it out.
Breaking news from Top Bin Talks. Yo, yeah,
we have inside information. Jonathan David
inside info, bro. Trust me, man. That guy, I'm happy for him.
Well, there's talks about him going to Bayern Munich.
Bayern Munich, yeah, talks in Bayern Munich. Somewhere in Italy. I don't know where in Italy. AC Milan.
AC Milan.
Man United.
Yeah. Well, there's talks also about Man United is another one, which would be interesting. And then there's also,
do y'all even have a striker?
I
just talked about Tejan going to Inter Milan.
Inter.
Yeah.
Should be fucking awesome, man. That'd be
He's gonna have to learn. He gonna have to get fit and defend like a motherfucker.
What a fucking place to go learn, though, man. Like, honestly, like, and you're seeing this resurgence now with Serie A.
Yeah.
You have what?
Nah, fuck them guys, bro. They racist out there, bro. Fuck them guys. Lukaku got suspended for doing his celebration, but they're not saying shit to the fans.
Stupidest thing I've ever seen.
Italian Serie A, bro. I mean, only if Italians want to go play there. But if you're an Italian, bro, don't go play there, yo. They'll find a reason. Italian Serie A was so dope early 2000s, bro. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's racism everywhere, but fam, the way they handled that situation got me tight. So fuck them guys.
No, it was. I don't understand how they handled it. Like, it makes no fucking sense.
You just suspend the player for doing this. How?
Because you're riling up the fucking crowd. Are you serious? They can say whatever the fuck they want to you, but you're the one who's not supposed to react.
Absolutely carnage, bro. Like there's a lot fans be doing the most too. Like I seen a video in Netherlands, one of the PSV fans threw something and hit a guy in the head and he was bleeding. The coach got the mic and started yelling at the fans and was like, yo, what the fuck you guys doing? Yo, like, yeah, just enjoy the game. And PSV usually gonna win the game anyway. It's not like y'all going like why are you guys wilding out for, yo? It actually makes no sense. Like, don't get me, like I said, there's racism, racial tension everywhere, but fam, these guys are acting like you haven't seen Lukaku in Italy playing for Inter Milan before. Like all of a sudden you come near one game that you ever experienced in your life and you want to be chanting racial slurs. There's another thing going around about the America banning Mexico from playing in America because their fans and their racial chants, the racial slurs chants.
Yeah, it's the racist and the homophobic chants.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like,
that's what they do all the time,
bro,
right?
just enjoy the game. There's so many other things you can say to a player, bro. That's what I'm saying. Like,
I know.
you just
I know.
running out
No,
of
there
shit
is.
to say.
There is. There's a lot of other things. It's literally trying to do something to get under. Like, it's almost like I've run out of things to say. It's not working. I'm doing this, but you're like, you're not fucking. It's fucking wild, man. It's the cultural side of it. There's that cultural side of it, which is you're seeing a lot of that negative side of the culture. Which again, you see that in England where they start chanting about the tragedies of other teams. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, seriously?
It's wild, man. Them guys, they need to figure that out over there in Italy. I don't know. I'm not saying, like I said, I'm not saying it doesn't happen in every league, but at least people are pushing towards it. Like pushing towards fighting against it. In Italy, it's like, it's just another day in Italy. Like, what the fuck?
It seems like it just keeps happening, and there's no real repercussions for it. You know what I mean? Like they can ban them all they want. They can ban certain fans all they want, but
you got to be able to point
it's the same thing that keeps happening.
Yeah. I mean, if the fans are gonna say all that shit, then you should allow the players to celebrate how they want.
Yeah. And I don't get me wrong. I get that there's a line with that.
There's a limit. Yeah, there's a limit.
There's definitely a line with what the players can do as well. There is.
Yeah.
But that was the line. That celebration was the line.
How about the guy from New York Red Bulls doing a racial slur to one of my boys in San Jose? Crazy stuff,
it's
bro.
Fucking like
and that's not his first time doing it, apparently.
I know. I heard that too, and you're like, what the fuck? It's like you're like with all of the cameras now, you really think you're not going to get caught?
My thing is, what do the teams do? Like, you know, you're not expecting your teammate or anything, or like a player on your team to partake in that. How do you react as a coach, as a GM?
Yeah.
Like, let's say it's one of your top players. Like, you bought him, this and that. Like, how do you react? Do you just fine him?
That's a super interesting one, man. I think like
we should ask Bobby.
I was gonna say for our next guest, that would be a really good question to ask. Like, what if fucking Becker loses his head? Yeah. And you're like, fuck, I've known him for how long? Like, that's not his character, but he lost his head and he just
But you have to do something about it because it doesn't look good.
There has to be a repercussion because all of a sudden now you have to hold people to standards, right? But it's even harder like when you bring in someone and they haven't been around the group that long. And now
like you get them like, or you get them from one of those Eastern European countries where usually there's racial tension there. Yeah. So like what do you do? He's like, yo, this is stuff you've been saying his whole life, and then all of a sudden
now it's an issue. But like you're like, well, you're in a different country. Like it's all that kind of stuff. How do you approach it?
That's like that.
Yeah. No, it's like
that's a great question, though.
Yeah, that would be a good one to ask him, man.
Because that would deter people from how you react to the situation might stop other players from coming to play for you.
Yeah.
That one situation.
Or that affects like
the rest of the locker room.
But not just the rest
or
of the
your potential to go to another team.
Future opportunities. If you're a coach or a GM and you don't handle this properly, you're gonna apply for another job. You're gonna go, what the fuck happened with that?
Yeah.
So no, it's actually been a fucking wild start to the MLS and CPL season. It's incredible. Like
I'm just baffled. I'm just seeing all this stuff online, and like now I'm getting back into Twitter more, tweeting a little bit more because I got nothing better to do. Like I'm not playing. So it's like no one can really tell me anything. Well, focus on soccer. Hey, buddy, I'm not playing right now. So I have so much other time. But that for all the soccer lovers out there, obviously, we were talking about our next guest. Our next guest is the one of the biggest soccer fanatics and maniacs you can ever meet, speak to, and he knows everything or just about anything. And a lot of the things that we were talking about, CPL, the Canadian Champions League, Canadian Championship, and MLS, European football, like he's got the knowledge and the ins and outs, and probably might spill some tea, who knows? But when we bring him on, this is reverence that we're talking to, for me at least. I already know the man like the back of my hand, but like I want you, Adam, to ask as many questions because like I know what I would ask him, but there's probably something that you might bring up that I'm like, oh shit, I never thought about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
like I seen him
100%.
every day. I seen him every day. So sometimes you take advantage. It's like people ask me, "Yo, have you ever been to the CN Tower?" I'm like, I've been to the CN Tower. I can't even remember the last time I've been to the CN Tower. And I lived in Toronto my whole life. It's almost like that's how I felt about this guest. And this guest that we're talking about is Mr. Bobby Smyrniotis, ex-technical director of Sigma FC, current Forge coach and technical director, three-time champion, four-time CPL finals, CONCACAF
Never won a
Champions
coach
League.
of the year.
Never won a coach of the year, which is baffling to me. I'd be fighting on Twitter. Yeah, I'm the big I'd be fighting people on Twitter.
Oh.
I'd be nah, man. That's what we talked
And you
about
know
it
what?
with Chris
And you know what's hard too. Pat's had a great start. What if Halifax go on a run here? Like,
yo, nah. If Halifax go on a run, let's say Halifax and Forge play in the final again. Like Forge goes to the final again, and Halifax go to the final. They get Pat the coach of the year. You actually might have to fight, bro.
buddy,
They actually might
look
have
where
to fight.
Halifax finished last year. Like that's
No, we still might
like,
have to fight. We still actually might have to fight. 5 years in a row. Nah. Nah, you have to draw the line somewhere. It's almost like when Messi and Ronaldo were scoring 70 goals a season and then they scored 45. People are like, yo, they're on a down sleep. They're losing their I'm like, fam.
Give Van Dijk the Ballon d'Or. You're like, whoa, slow your roll. Like
Mbappe's best, everybody's like, yeah, Mbappe's the next. I'm like, Mbappe's best goal scoring season is 50 goals. Fam, them mans are doing that like this. Like
yeah,
eyes closed.
see the stat that like Mbappe and Holland, if they want to come close, they have to score something like 50 goals until they're 37 or 38 consistently.
Bro,
it's fucking
look at
absurd.
This, bro.
It's absurd.
That's what I'm saying. So like, what are we talking about? But yeah, our next interviewee, I guess you would say, Mr. Bobby Smyrniotis. What's up, everyone? As we said, we have a really, really special guest. It is probably my favorite coach that I've ever had. My coach of the year for the first 5 years of the CPL, and I thought about it on Twitter every year it's happened. 4-time finalist, 3-time champion for the Canadian Premier League, ex-technical director of Sigma FC, and now technical director of Forge FC and head coach, Bobby Smyrniotis. I said it right?
Well done, Kwame. It's only taken you a few years.
Yeah. Oh, and a big birthday shout out to him as well. Thank you for hopping on your birthday, Bobby. I know you're only 30, but time flies.
There you go. Yes. You just made me. You guys have all made me old quick.
We're gonna get to that as well. But like I said, thank you again for hopping on. Our first question is probably just gonna be for those that don't know you. You could give us a little bit of your background synopsis. I know like you've been in the game of football for over 25 years. So, I mean, give us a brief synopsis and how it's gotten you to the CPL and Forge.
Yeah, I guess the easiest way is in 2005, I moved back to the Toronto area from being overseas in Greece, working on a master's degree, working as a youth coach at the Olympiacos, and had this crazy idea to try and start up an academy and work with players in a structured environment and try and provide a structured environment to help players basically have something that I didn't have as a young soccer player growing up here. You know, an opportunity beyond youth or a window to be able to attempt to keep on playing. So that was 2005. Fast forward, I think we did a great job at that Sigma, and Sigma continues to do a great job over with Coach Phil and Coach John, as you know them very well. And in 2014, I was approached by Scott Mitchell and Bob Young when the first thoughts of CPL came to their mind of really creating a national league as opposed to having a team of Hamilton playing in, let's say, a USL or any of the leagues, NASL back then. And slowly worked on that project to get us to 2019, where we got together, the two of us, once again after many years, and to win ourselves the first championship in the Canadian Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a story. Like, your story is obviously unbelievable. I try to tell people all the time. They might be too scared to approach you because if you're the beard and have these conversations with you. But I always tell people, I'm like, he's one of those guys, those coaches where if you talk to him, he'll talk to you, but he's not going to go out of his way to give you the knowledge. Like, you really just got to go. If you're curious enough, he's going to tell you what you want to know. But my next question is going to be, why the CPL and like, why Canada? Did you see, obviously you're from Greece, you spent time in Holland and spent time in Greece and spent time with those big clubs. What made you want to come to Canada and start something like Sigma in Canada? And like, why did that propel you to the CPL? Like, why did you choose the CPL when you could have probably went back to Europe and coached in Europe at professional level?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, it's I grew up playing the game here. I grew up playing locally in East York, down in the center of Toronto, and growing up, there was excellent players that played with me, and we just didn't have opportunities, and you never really knew why you didn't have the opportunities or what was missing in our game, because the players were there. There was excellent players in the generation that I was playing in, and then having the experience of working overseas. When I started coaching, I first started really coaching organized in a professional club like Olympiacos. So you learn to work with youth in what I'd say is the correct way, and not many of the ways in which we trained or we played as youth players. And I never put anything against my youth coaches. They were doing their best, and everyone's done their best. It's just we really had no structure. Thinking of those two things together and what I learned overseas and just knowing the past of the actual talent base in Canadian soccer, I thought it was a great opportunity to try and set something up. At that point, the youth clubs weren't really open to my ideas of working with them to trying to create a high performance center within the clubs. I think everyone thought it was foreign, it was something different. So yeah, I talked with my brother Costa, as you know him very well. He was working down in Bay Street, and we said, let's put something together here, because there's definitely talent in this country. We just need to find a very organized way of doing it. And we're ambitious. In the beginning, we thought we were going to churn out pros. After 3 to 6 months. I was a young guy, obviously, getting started, and you learn the ins and outs of the game. And it took us a while, but I think we got the success we wanted as time went on.
Yeah, Bobby, just really quickly, you talked about like the structural differences there, obviously coming from Olympiacos and coming back and your own experiences. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, because as someone who's now, obviously, I coach a young team. I'm not the head coach, I'm an assistant coach, and I'm kind of learning that and seeing a lot of just having these different philosophies and everything. What would you say at the time were kind of the biggest structural differences, and how have you seen that kind of progress since as you've kind of gone through? And do you see there's been positive progression for the coaches now coming up and the players that are getting developed?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things when you look at it structurally, there was no universal way of doing things within a club. Each team in a club belonged to the coach. The coach started with him at U9 and went with him through U18, and that was kind of the way things were done. So teams didn't really belong to anything. So there was no culture. There was no feeling of belongingness to players. And I think those are two of the most important things we tried to do with Sigma right from the beginning, was set a culture, but also set a universal way of training and playing throughout the academy. And we started small. We started with 2 teams, and each year we grew by another 2 teams to get us to, I think it was 2008 or 9, where we had filled out the academy with teams. And this was before the time we were part of Ontario Soccer. We're looked at as those on the outside of the system. Mm-hmm. And we never looked at ourselves that way. We looked at ourselves as possibly, supporting the system or a solution to the system. fast forward, and I think a lot of the concepts of not only Sigma, but a lot of those academies playing in the Soccer Academy Alliance of Canada many years ago is what became the birth of what we have now in the youth high performance leagues like OPDL and the different ones across the country. That all started from a group of 4 or 5 academies that were 10, and Kwame knows it well because he competed in those competitions, and I think that was the biggest thing. It's a universal way of doing things. Coaches who are all bought into that way of doing it and really creating a culture around the club.
Yeah, man. I mean, like even playing in that SAC league, we didn't have, obviously we had like what 8 teams probably. We play each team like how the CPL was, but I think as you went on in those games, you realize that guys weren't playing for results. Like, yeah, we wanted to win, but like we would literally, okay, what do we do at training? What did I do at training? Like, how can I bring that to the field? And I think that was what was different from when we played club soccer, where it was everybody's like, yo, you have to win, you have to win. Like that's all that mattered. It didn't matter how you played. You just kick the ball up. The fastest player up top would go in behind and score, kick the ball over the goalie. But then when you came to the academy side, when we played A and B, even though they weren't as good as Sigma, we played Bryce Academy. They weren't as good as us, but you can tell like what they were trying to work on, what their coach was trying to implement, they were doing on the field. Even if it wasn't to win against us, they were getting some type of development where it was always consistent. I was gonna say, because we had Chris on, me and Chris were talking about Battle Cats and Uruguay club teams. And when you talk about club teams, Uruguay was basically a bunch of parents bringing their kids and playing how they understood football, the South American style, and bringing them to play futsal and in the NYSL back in those days. And then Battle Cats was almost the same thing, but just an athletic version. And we talked about all the battles that we had against one another. But how did you be like, okay, these are the 2 teams that I want to pick my players from to form the 95 age group? Because other than that, we had like Orestes was like from Olympic Flames. We had people from here and there, but Uruguay and Battle Cats were like the most of the makeup of the 95 team.
Yeah, I think when we first started, we targeted a couple of age groups back then. I believe you guys are around 11 years old when I first started watching, and there's a lot of good players on those teams. So we made sure we were out at the pitches watching and talking, and I think we knew that there was a lot of talented players there, along with sprinkling in some of the other ones like you just mentioned, who had come through our camps, our training programs, and so on in the beginning. But you look for natural talent. Because then you can develop it, you can culture that talent, and with the ultimate goal, like you mentioned before, Kwame, not to win games and not to win leagues, but to see a number of players move beyond youth football. Whatever that was. Everyone's ambitious and wants it to be pro. I think if a lot of you guys were 15 years old today, you'd be moving off to European clubs right away and not be going to NCAA. That's the ultimate truth. But you rewind and back then, you would send, or Kyle Larin would go overseas and it'd be a push for a club to look at him. Today they look at all Canadian players, and it's just the evolution of the game. But that was our biggest thing: try and make sure a lot of you, or most of you guys, were playing beyond youth football and keep on moving in the ranks. And back then, a lot of it was NCAA, and you guys were successful in moving off from there as well.
Yeah, because it almost seems like obviously in the I don't know, because like you would think, oh, most coaches in Canada around that time, like when we were like 12, 13, 14, that they used to follow the hype. So they would approach like the Fraser Airds, the Jordan Hamilton, who's on your team now. But like those guys that were hyped in the club soccer landscape, because that's all everyone ever knew. But you guys went out of the box, literally out of the box, and went for players that weren't highly scouted from the provincial programs or weren't highly scouted in those regional programs. And you guys have been able to develop like top players like Becker, obviously myself, Richie, and then like Kyle, Chris, like the list goes on and on. But I wanted to ask, like, obviously you were really good at the developmental side. Have you never ever thought of like doing youth national team, or before going to obviously the CPL, like did you realize that you had to change your approach? Did you change your approach going into professional soccer, like coaching real men? rather than, because I feel like you did it, but that's because I know you. So I used to tell you too. I used to be like, you can't treat this like it's Sigma, but then like the proof is in the pudding, so we couldn't really complain about it.
Yeah, I think when you look at, I think the first part to your question is, was I looking to coach youth national teams and so on? I think as much as a bunch of you drove me nuts, you know, I was fulfilled with what I was doing. You know, watching you guys move off, following you guys in college, those moving off to the pros. And remember, it's not only about the players who have moved on to play. It's also players who have gone on to have great careers outside of the game, who used the avenue of Sigma and certain things like that, who we still have great relationships with. So we can't lose fact in that because, okay, there's been, I think, 40 some players that moved off to play pro. But, you know, over 200 players went on scholarships. A lot of them are doing great jobs outside of football, the same way you will once your football is done in 10 years.
GM Kwame.
From there you go. Second part to your question is that I changed my approach. No, the only thing I had to do was just find the proper balance between developing players, making them better. Because when you've got good players and you can make them better, the team usually benefits. And finding the right balance from winning and still developing. And that's the toughest thing. And what you do there, Kwame, or what we've tried to do is stick to a philosophy and a way of playing, you know, principles of the game through thick and thin. You know, that's your guiding light. That's your guiding principles. And if you stick to that and the players believe in it, I think that usually brings the success because it's easy in the professional game. Go back to 2019, and I think the first three results weren't the greatest.
That's every year, though.
Correct.
It's happening right now. And I tell Adam all the time, like Forge, they don't start well.
We just had that conversation. We just had that conversation. It's so
we're
funny.
at a better point after 2 games than we have been in the last 2 years.
Yeah. I mean,
it's just, yeah, so we talked about like the slow build where, and again, I think that part of that comes from a little bit of philosophy and then obviously roster turnover. Like every single year, it's not like you guys are rolling out the same 11 all the time. Like there's been a couple players here and there that obviously you're going to lose. You lose players every single year, and being able to bring them in, like even just watching like Noah now. Noah was around last year and came in when he had to, and now this year he's now taking that next step. And no, it's pretty awesome to see, Bobby. I personally always really liked the way Forge have played the most. For me personally, it's kind of the way I grew up playing as well. And the nice and the one thing that I would say is when you started kind of creating the roster and looking for players, obviously you guys had a philosophy and you had a culture at Sigma. It seems like you just kind of took that forward and went, we're doing the exact same thing here, and I'm only bringing in players that are going to suit that.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing for a coach, especially in my situation. And it's why, you know, the project of Forge in the Canadian Premier League was very intriguing to me. You know, in many ways, we were given the keys to a fantastic location to build a club in our idea. So all those ideas that I had over the years, doing things with Sigma, working in League One as a coach, I was able to do this not only as a coach, but in actually building a group of players. And I go back to something that Kwame said, and it's finding also the players who not many people know about. And I think that's been the beauty a little bit of the Canadian Premier League. You know, there's a lot of players we know about through youth national teams and so on. But I think the great thing about this league is, you know, players have emerged, and whether they've played 2-3 years and now they're not playing, they made considerable contributions to the league. And I look at one player that was at Sigma who not many people knew about as a youth player, and came on, played for Forge for 2 years, was Cadell Thomas. You know, he's a great example of a player who had an excellent 2 years in the league. Obviously, he's not playing there, but this is a player that I don't think many people knew about as a youth one, if I'm correct, Kwame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's 100%. I mean, I feel like the people that knew Sigma and the players that are on Sigma will definitely understand. And like going back to philosophy, I think this is what me and Adam have always said. You can tell the teams that are usually at the top of the CPL have a consistent, they don't have a big turnover in a roster, and they have a consistent philosophy. Like Calvary, Forge, Pacific. And that's some of the biggest things that a lot of people like don't take into consideration. Like you can have names and everything on, like, let's say York United, they've added so many new players. Obviously roster turnover, it matters, but the changing coaching and then changing in players and then like obviously and then injuries and stuff that you can't control, but it's always been consistent with Forge and Calvary, and now Pacific is starting to get the mold as well. So I think you're definitely right about philosophy. When you pick your players in recruitment, what are the first things that you look at? Because obviously you would know if the player is a good player, because you're not just going to be like, yeah, I'm picking this guy. Like, what are the most important, I guess, off-field things that you look for in a player for guys that are watching this, if they want to ever have a chance to join Forge?
So off the field or on the field?
I mean, 3 on the field and 3 off the field, let's say. Because on the field, I'm sure you know what you're looking for, but for people that don't know.
Yeah, I think on the field, if you watch our team to play, we like the ball. So you better be comfortable with the ball on your feet, both under pressure and in circulation. If I look back to a lot of my education as a coach and looking at places like Ajax and Spain, I think the number one thing is passing and receiving. And it's such a small thing, but you probably went dizzy over your years at Sigma doing passing and receiving. Right,
Yep.
It's a massive thing that is big to the way we want to play, and it gives comfort to players, whether they're quick physically or whether they're just quick mentally, and they lack the physical speed that allows them to play at a high speed of play. So from there, of course, that's important. Off the field, I think the biggest thing is I like to find in players are that they're competitive and humble at the same time. That they're hungry to grow, they're hungry to reach results and higher levels as players, but they're also humble to come in and work every day, no matter what they've done in the past or what they haven't done in the past. Because the most important thing is we use the past as our guide, but that's all it is. It's what you do in the next game, and once this game finishes, everyone only cares about how good you are in the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And Bob, just one thing you said there that's really interesting. You talk about speed of play, not just physically, but also on the mental side of it. For you personally going through like that is kind of like the difference, I guess the way that I've kind of characterized it in the past is that's the difference between like talent selection, which is, yeah, Alphonso Davies. I'm going to select, like, that's an easy one. You can select that talent, but like the talent identification side of it, which is where you find those kids who they haven't been picked for provincial teams and maybe they're quicker mentally rather than physically. When you're looking at trying to identify talent like that, what would be like the first things you talk about, like the speed mentally? Are there things like that you can see within the game where you're like, he's thinking on a way different level?
Yeah, I think how quickly a player moves the ball in certain situations and what they can see, not only in front of them, but beyond 30 to 60 meters. And a great example of that is Noah Jensen. He's a player who plays both right, left foot. Not many people take him for a quick player, but he's quite quick getting out of pockets and small areas. And he's a player who knows when to see the pass at 10 meters and knows when to see the pass at 60. And that alleviates a lot of pressure in certain situations of the game. So that's kind of the mental speed of play. He's a great example of a player like that. Again, maybe a player as a youth one that went under the radar, didn't go under the radar at Sigma. And we always knew he's going to be a player with a high ceiling.
So you just basically recruited a mini Becker.
That is correct.
at least you're not hiding it. Oh, so you were talking about education. Obviously, people that know you and obviously have watched Forge play over the years and Sigma play over the years, they know your background, like you said, Ajax and Olympiacos. But we had someone on, and you probably know him, Richard Bucciarelli.
Yep.
Yeah, I said it right. Yeah. I work with him in the off season at his speed training stuff, and he always helps me get right for the upcoming season. And he was telling me that was education of coaches in Canada is the biggest difference to how it is in Europe to how it is in Canada. He's like, it's not really the player's fault. It's usually the level of coaching and how much importance and how much backing and money they put into the coaching part of it. And can you attest to that?
Yeah, I think some of it is cultural. It's when we go over to Europe and a lot of these clubs, a lot of these coaches are very passionate about what they do, and there's a good background into what they're doing. You look at that, and a lot of experience I've had in places like Belgium, Spain, Holland, Germany. There's a great deal of passion, but most importantly, there's also consistency. So they work. Youth coaches work in clubs that have a common vision. They work in clubs where they're usually there for a few years. So there's a few stark differences to youth coaches here. A lot of times, a youth coach is moving from one club to the other, maybe because there aren't many full-time or good-paying jobs. Technical directors don't last very long at youth clubs, right? Because of different ways that the clubs are set up with different board members. Those change. A new technical director comes in. So sometimes it's not to the detriment of the people we have, but it's in total to the system. When you ask what one of the secrets of Sigma was over the years, longevity. There was two of us that made decisions, myself and Costa from the beginning, and we had a long-term vision. And unless we left, there was nobody to get rid of us. Along with that, Coach John Zervos, Philip Opicinis, and all of these guys have been there since 2007. You look at the new generation of Sigma, and 6 of the new coaches there are all former players who went through the academy, who went off and on scholarships and are now coming back and working in it. And it's one thing I learned from Ajax. It's to be part of Ajax, Ajax needs to be in you, and I think that's the important next step we're getting in, and basically creating an infrastructure of football where good players who had a good education in the game want to come back and give to the game. And I think slowly, if that's happening more and more in different pockets around the country, we will see that increase in what we're doing, because education of coaches, it's ongoing. I spent 3 weeks in Europe in this off season. Myself, you have to go see, you have to talk with different people. I'm on discussions with different technical people every 2 weeks overseas, talking different matters, whether it's about their team or about my team here. I think that's the most important thing, and it's one of the things we lack a little bit in Canada and maybe in North America. It's a coaching culture and a culture amongst coaches to speak more openly about the game.
Yeah, do you think that there's like the ability, like you talked about, if you just spent time overseas, and you're talking all these different technical leads all over the world kind of thing, right? So, and I like how you talked about like the coach, like the learning doesn't stop. So again, like within this country, you have to receive certain you need a certain accreditation to be able to coach at a certain level. And I think it's also kind of difficult because if you want to go over and do your UEFA licenses, there's part of it of being able to go there and get it, right? So is there a way in which you think that we can try and help promote more coaches to try and get there? Does it help with now Canada's world ranking that maybe they'd be more willing to accept more Canadians in some of those programs?
I think there's 2 ways of looking at it. When we're talking about education, I think the most important component to it is maybe clubs here working with clubs overseas directly to have exchange situations, because the most important education happens when you go straight to the surgeon and not when you go to the university class. So, spending my time over the years and probably combined, for months at a time, spending at Ajax, maybe it's combined to 2 years in total. I do that 100 times over than getting licenses. And licenses are the paper that allows you to work. They're not the ones that define you as a coach. So that's 2 separate things. I think the biggest thing we need to do is provide more opportunities for coaches here, or coaches take the opportunities, as I did at very young, and I invested in myself. And I spent a lot of time at European clubs, watching everything from the U9s up to the first team, day over day over day over day. It's not an easy thing to do, but I think that's where you gain a lot of knowledge. The courses, of course, with Canada being much better on the national stage, now with the national team and so on, that's obviously going to open up a lot more doors for people to be able to do this, and hopefully to be able to increase opportunities at licensing as well.
Yeah, man. A lot of people ask. Hold on, is that mine?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello. I think that's mine. Okay.
Very good.
A lot of people ask me, "Oh, you don't want to coach when you're done? You don't want to?" But I'm trying to figure. I always say, like, how do you influence or try to get someone like myself to want to get into coaching? You know what I mean? Like a lot of people look down, oh, I don't want to coach because I see the stress that Bobby has gone through. Because I was part of the reason why the man was stressed. So you know what I mean? I'm like, I don't want to coach myself at youth soccer. Obviously, I love the game, and I'll never say that I don't love the game enough to help develop. But does it only come down to the love, or is there other things that like moving pieces that go in towards like trying to influence another generation of coaches? Because I know people would want to coach, but when they see like how the process goes, they're just like, I don't want to go through that whole ordeal. They feel like they can just jump in and coach.
Yeah, and that's probably the biggest mistake a lot of people make. One, it's you usually, as a coach myself, you see certain players who have a knack for it. Certain players that really like the tactics, the understanding of things, whether it's how they follow video or how they have different discussions. You know, on the second part of that, we're seeing more and more in global football that top coaches at the professional level are actually coaches who have gone through the whole system, who have worked as youth coaches. There's few now that are making the straight jump. They're usually starting in the youth ranks, moving themselves up to second team football and so on, and then working up that way. And I think, to be honest, I think that's the next phase of how we're going to be seeing a lot of the professional coaches. You look like at a guy like Erik ten Hag at Manchester United. And if you know his history, he's worked at every youth level, at every type of Dutch club, to reserve football, to FC Utrecht in the first division and Eredivisie and Ajax and on. He's a guy that knows how to touch a player at each level, whether it's a development, whether it's to push them to a higher level. And I think those are important things. But in trying to convince somebody to be a coach, I don't think you can convince somebody to be a coach. I think you can get their feet wet, by getting into academy football, seeing how they like things, or getting them around the first team to see which area that they enjoy. And beyond that, Kwame, one thing that's for sure in Canada that we haven't had many jobs outside of coaching either. But with a professional league and a lot more growth, there's going to be a lot more jobs in media or technical directors, scouting departments, analysts. If there's the one thing you learn in traveling overseas a lot, it's, each team of these big clubs have one head coach, but they've got 10 analysts. So I think there's some pretty good jobs, in the peripheral positions within a staff.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know if my AirPods are messed up or not, but I think I'm just gonna do this without my AirPods. Sorry, guys.
Coaching is definitely something that obviously I've looked into as well. I'm not saying my career is anywhere near done, but I think as you get older, a lot of people ask, "Oh, what's your favorite team?" And now you just become a fan of football. A lot of my friends that play pro, they're fans of football and they still have a favorite team. Like I would say, yeah, my favorite team is Barcelona just because of the way they played since I was a kid growing up. But now I can watch Burnley versus Luton Town and still feel the same type of enjoyment watching it as I watch Man City, Liverpool. And I think that's
because Burnley plays like Barca.
That is true.
I caught you there.
But you know what I mean? Like I can watch like any random games and I'm like, maybe it's because I've been able to get coached by like people like you, Patrick Vieira, etc. That like I'm able to understand the game. I'm like watching the game, trying to learn instead of watching it as a fan. And sometimes that I feel bad because like you're judging those other players, and then I'm like, never mind, these guys are at a higher level than me, so I can't really judge. So it's kind of like trying to find that balance where it's like you just enjoy it, but then you catch yourself like judging at the same time. My next question was when at Forge, now you're at Forge, 4 years in a row you go to the finals, CONCACAF Champions League, first ever CPL team to do it. Sad I wasn't able to play that game. What was the overall experience of playing in Mexico at one of the best North American stadium? And like, what was the whole experience? Like watching it from TV is a whole different situation where I talked to Tristan Henry and I talked to Dom, and they were like, the environment was unbelievable because they've never played in somewhere like that. So for you, that's been almost everywhere. Like, how was that experience?
Can't breathe. That's the most important thing
to
know
altitude?
there. you hear the stories about playing at the Azteca and the altitude, and to be honest, you can't imagine it until you're there. And a great story I always have to tell is right before the match, there's a pre-game press conference, and at the Azteca, when you leave the field, there's a small ramp that you walk up, but it's maybe 20 feet, and then you have to sit down and give your press conference. So I walk up the ramp, I sit down, I couldn't catch my breath to answer questions. It's something else. If you look at the team in that game, we were going through probably 10 to 15 minute spurts where the guys had excellent energy, and then for 10 minutes, and they each said it after the game, they felt like they couldn't catch their breath at all. So it was quite the experience. Okay, and then from an atmosphere, of course, it's fantastic. You walk into the field pre-game, and the only thing I had was a big smile on my face, and the same thing to all the players. And but you know me, Kwame, I wasn't just happy to be there. Huh?
Yeah, I know. I can only imagine.
We're not just happy to be there, and just the same way Cruz Azul came and saw Niagara Falls one day and then had to play a game for us. We saw the Azteca the day before. Great, beautiful stadium, big, historic. But then you play a game, and we always go with the belief that everything is possible.
So so obviously, like, again, you talk about the altitude, and you're never going to be able to figure it out until you're there, until you truly experience it. Were there any things that you guys would have done in training prior to that to try and prepare in any way?
Much bigger budget to get there 10 days before. You know, it's because when you look at it scientifically, you probably need more than a week or less than 24 hours. By the rules of the competition, you can't get there at 24 hours. You have to be there 2 days before the game for all the media and all those things. And yeah, to get there 10 days earlier is quite the budget. So maybe that's what we'd try and do looking at next year. But hopefully we're there, and if we get to play at the Azteca again, we'll be happy to do it.
Yeah, you talking about not just happy to be there. I feel like that has been personality trait of everyone on our team even when I was there, and some of the guys now. How do you keep the guys motivated? Because I know there's some times where the guys are like, you know what, like, we most likely going to be in the final. Like, I understand there's confidence. I don't think there's arrogance, but because it's been a consistent theme, guys know what they're supposed to do and how to get it done. But how do you keep them on the right track?
You know, I think a lot of it is it's always breeding confidence. As a coach, I focus 90% on our own team, on Forge, and 10% on the opponent, whether that's York or Cruz Azul or Olympia or whoever it is. I want us to play our football. I want us as much as possible, even in the moments where you will get outplayed in Honduras, to still have the mentality that we can go on the front foot. And then beyond that, you tell me as a player in 2021, would you trade in the 4 rounds of CONCACAF League for anything?
No.
Right. So the motivation is there. You know, playing those games, playing in the different atmospheres. The 3-0 game at home against Santos. You know, we were just in Costa Rica, and I actually met the coach from Santos. He's now working with the Costa Rica national teams.
Wow.
So we had a good discussion there, and he was reminiscing about that game and how good we were,
and how cold it was,
and how it was a big loss for them, obviously. But then, you know, on the flip side, you look at the Motagua series, 2-2 at home, you scoring the tying goal at the end, and us going down there, you know, having played every 3 days for the whole season, 0-0, 1 goal away from going to CONCACAF League finals. I think that's motivation enough for players, for sure.
And Bobby, just like really quick, like, I think like one of the things that we've also talked about is the difference in generations now coming up, especially with the younger kids, and how they're probably motivated differently than we were, and we were motivated differently than the group before us. Are you finding it a little bit different now dealing with some of the younger kids coming up? Obviously not from like the playing side of it, but from like the person side of it, when you talk about how you have Noah Jensen and Kyle Becker. There's a huge gap in age between the two of them, and how they were brought up, and probably the way in which they were almost coached, like from a motivational standpoint. How do you kind of balance that with different players and all the different personalities?
There's a few things. One, as a staff, you always have to know how you're talking to each player. There's certain ways of approaching one player and certain ways of approaching another one. And that's not about favoritism, but it's about how you're getting the message across. And then on the flip side, it's making sure that you have a good balance in your team. If you want to be a team that competes for championships, if you want to be a team that's had success in CONCACAF, you need that balance of the veterans. And when we talk about veterans, it doesn't have to be a guy that's 35 years old. It has to be a guy that's played a lot of games. It's to relay messages to the younger players. So the younger players also show up every day to training and know this is the standard. And that's the most important thing in the cultural building of a club, when there's a standard. So when you walk in the door as a first aid player and your captain or a player that's played 100 games for your club is the first one there, he's doing his activation in the morning, he's taking care of his body. You as a 19-year-old, what choice do you have? Right. So if you create the culture, I think everyone comes in line. And if they don't in the beginning, they'll soon find out very quickly that that's the only way.
A lot of people don't know about your militant background. And we always make the joke, and the guys will probably tell you that we used to think like Forge is the military. And people from outside of Forge will look at us and think that we're prima donnas, we get everything we want, we do this. I'm like, you guys don't even know the half that's going on. The preseasons that we used to have when I was there, the no days off, and the travel schedule. Like, I think that 2021 season, everybody was like, how did Forge get Omar Brown, Mo Babuli, Josh Navarro, this guy? And I'm like, because they see what we're doing, and clearly something's right. But when they walk in the locker room, the first week and a half, they look at us, they start shaking their head. And I'm like, yeah, welcome to, this is heaven and hell at the same time. Because what we show everybody else, it wasn't positive. But then when we come into the side of the locker room, we're just like, God damn. But I mean, the results, we always say, like, obviously it's a results-based business at the end of the day. And if you're putting out good results, it's not going to, that's just telling Bobby what he's doing is working. So it's either you fold, which none of the guys, you've got guys in the locker room who are hella competitive, who aren't just there just to be there. So they won't fold. So it's just like complaining on deaf ears. And a lot of people don't understand that. But from the outside looking in, a lot of guys think that like Forge, because of Bob Young and because of like the CSB and Scott Mitchell being the president, whatever, they think that like we have things on a silver platter. But I'm like, nah, man, it doesn't work like that. We grinded for it.
A couple of things there, Kwame. To your surprise, the guys have 2 days off.
No way.
Hasn't happened much.
Wow.
Hasn't happened much.
Wow.
You're surprised. You know, on the flip side, discipline is one of the most important things to me, along with everything. And you can have all the talent, you can have all the good players, but without that discipline, you're not going to get very far. If you want to win, it's tough. Because if you want to win and you want to be a player at Forge, you can't have a day off. Days off are for others. And that's, I'm not talking about other teams, but it's just not something that occurs at the club, because on a day off, you give a chance to somebody else. And, you know, that's the mentality we keep. And yeah, we've been able to recruit good players. And, you know, you mentioned a good point there about our owner, Bob Young, and everyone, you know, but, you know, a little bit of a spoiler, there's a salary cap in our league. And traditionally, over these first 4 years, there have been other teams that spend more money than Forge. So that should be more of the discussion.
Yeah, I think it's just literally just misinformation, or they're just tired of losing, so they're trying to point at something else that might be the reason for it. But Bobby, would you say that your players that you coached throughout your years have developed or taken on your personality? Like, would you say, because everybody says your players are a resemblance of your coach. When we score, like, we're happy, but we're like angry happy. And you too, at the same, like, we look at the bench when the celebrations go on. I see how you celebrate, because half of the game I used to play on your side. So if we score, I can see how you guys celebrate. And it's more of a angry than rather than like a happy everybody high-fiving or anything like that. Like, would you, in general, do you say that your players take on your personality trait?
Yeah, I think it's usually that way. You know, I'm not a person of highs and lows. You know, when things are great, it's all right, off to the next one, because we're going to be judged on the next one. And when things aren't going well, And we had a spell like that last year for the first time in club's history where we hadn't won a game in 5. It was easy to say, what's going on here and so on, but you believe in the processes and you move on. And I think that's the most important thing in players. That's the humble component. When you're doing well, okay, we have to keep this line. And when things aren't going well, no problem. We keep moving forward. That's why I'm, like you said, I'm not the guy jumping up and down on the sidelines when we're scoring a goal. And it's celebrations are celebrations. That's mostly for you guys. I get to exhale at the end of the year when we've done well, because that's usually is for a coach. Just a nice big exhale of breath. And then 3 days later, you're like, all right, we've set the standard and now we have to do this again.
Yeah, Adam, and it actually is 3 days later. Like, it's legit 3 days later. It's all right, yo. Now exit meetings. Like, then we go back to like how we're gonna start back next year. You've been able to coach a lot of national team players. The top goal scorer for our national team, Kyle Larin, and I guess our best right back, what's his name? Paul Stalteri. But yeah, Richie's the best right back that Canada has ever had. And you've been able to Kyle, Richie, Tejan was at Sigma for a little bit. The youth national team, Chris Nanko. Like, how do you feel when you see that the players that you've had majority of their time, they're basically their whole youth and adult career, almost adult career? How do you feel when you see them being able to go represent Canada in the World Cup?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing to say is pride. It's here are guys that not only I've had the ability to work with as youth players, but you still hold the relationship with them today. And you know that yourself, whether you're in college or playing somewhere else. My line is always open. It's a line I use with all the players. It's once you're in the family, you're in the family. Maybe there's points where we won't see the eye on things, but
or you won't answer.
But there you go. But of course, I'm there. All right, and that's the most important thing. And you're usually there. And it's important to be there in the moments that aren't so well, because when everything is going well, everyone's talking. And I think that's the one thing I enjoy the most with all of former players, whether it's guys still playing, national team players. We look at a player like Mandrakar James, who's had 18 caps with the national team, and a few months ago gives me a call because we're in contact over the years and with his situation in Ukraine, and the relationship brings him back to Forge, from there. So those are the things that I think I'm most proud about, is that the players are looking to me sometimes for advice on different things. And now, as being the coach at Forge, sometimes it's working out in my favor too, and getting some good players on the team.
Definitely. Bobby, one thing that I just wanted to ask really quickly, obviously, because as a coach, like you're sitting there, you're implementing your system, and now you have to rely on everyone else to go do it. Like, there's a major amount of stress that kind of comes with the fact that potentially there's very little you can do, especially when it comes to a game. So when you look at something like, obviously it's a little bit different, but like for some coaches going out with like job security, you see all the turnover in the Premier League right now with how many coaches they come in, they try and implement their system, and if it doesn't go well, it's really, really, really hard to kind of be able to adapt. And I think we're seeing it with TFC a little bit right now, where you bring in all these new players, you try and implement something and it doesn't work. In the past, I'm not sure if that's ever happened to you, but what were some of the things that you were able to do when you talk about last year with Forge? You went through 5 games, had not won a game. What were some like the personal things that you kind of do to try and take stress away, and how you try and fix it on the pitch?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, you're right. We work in training all week, and the game is the players. It's their execution. You try and give them the guiding principles of what we want to do in that game, and off they go. And sometimes the most difficult thing is also the way Forge wants to play. We don't like random football, and there's a lot of random football in the CPL and a lot of leagues, even in MLS. I like to be in control of the game, whether on the ball or off the ball, making the game predictable from what our opponent does, and then trying to be unpredictable ourselves. And And that takes a lot of mental stress even to the players. Because it's not about just getting the ball up the field quick and doing different things and individual, and because that creates a lot of spaces in the field that I don't like to see. So from there, it's a challenge, especially for the players at Forge. We ask them to do a lot. That's also our game this past Saturday. We've done everything and anything, and we've had to score in the 87th or 88th minute, and so on, playing against sometimes some lower block teams. And then the next part to your question is what do? You sit back, you look at, okay, where are the players? Maybe, last year, to be honest, we attributed that to, at some point, we knew from the beginning of the season that the team would just die. Most of those guys had gone, and Kwame was part of that team, of playing 40 games in 150 days the year before, with 3 weeks off before getting back for Champions League, starting preseason in January when the CPL started in April. That was a long period. At some point, all of that fatigue was going to come out in the team. You just can't. You can't keep on going. And that fatigue came once we had finished the Canadian Championship with TFC. So you obviously had that peak that everyone was looking forward to. That finished. And then here we go. We've got 12 games left in the league, whatever it was, 13. And that's when everyone decided to, kind of bring the reins in and start slowing down on their high intensity runs, Kwame. Right. So right there, you have to read it. You have to acknowledge it. So certain things, you shorten training sessions, you take certain tactical, a lot of information, don't overload the players, making things a little bit more enjoyable in training, and just believing in the principles of your game.
Yeah, I remember you used to tell us oh, the difference between this game and the last game is the amount of high intensity runs we did. And you would literally, every time we would have one game where the numbers were high, we won 3-4-0. Another game where we probably tied or won 1-0 by the scrape of our teeth, it's because you did 11 runs this time, and the other day you did 5. Maybe the next 2 high intensity runs could have created a goal scoring opportunity. So that's when we look at it, it was damn. The proof was in the pudding. So we really had nothing to really come back with. But a lot of guys don't understand how much work it is, obviously mentally, you said that, to play for Forge. Because of your IQ, soccer IQ, you have to have players that are at least able to understand the game almost not as your level, but understand the system that you're trying to implement. Do you think that maybe for a situation like a team like Chelsea, do you think the coaches that they've had in place were too separated, were based on IQ, or the players didn't understand the game to the level, I can't see a Pep Guardiola going to go coach a lower level team, because maybe they don't have that, the stuff that Pep's saying, they'll never be able to understand it, implement it in the game.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a connection that teams should have?
Yeah, I think so. But, you make an interesting point. I think, if Pep Guardiola goes and coaches, pick a team in the Premier League, a middle table team.
Crystal Palace,
he'll probably bring him up 5 positions. You look at Unai Emery and what he's doing with Aston Villa.
Yeah.
And you're seeing the power. It's that team probably won't be a champion, but they'll be much more entertaining. The results will be there. So of course, coaches can have that small push. And when you look at Chelsea, I think they had their coach a few coaches ago and let him go prematurely.
Tuchel, you mean?
That is correct.
Okay.
Well, when you said mid-table, I was going to say Chelsea.
I mean, they are mid-table as well. So. Because you see it where it's what do you think is the best way for a coach coming in, obviously if they're in the hot seat, to implement their system? Do you think it's better for them to do it on the field consistently, or a bunch we did a lot of film at Forge and people don't understand that, which was followed by 2-hour training sessions, which people don't know either. I'm sorry if I'm snitching on you right now, but hey, I'm helping the guys back there. Yeah. But we used to do film for 30 minutes probably before training, and then we'll do another 30 after training. But that was 3-4 times a week. Is that something that you learned overseas and a lot of coaches should start implementing it?
Yeah, I think when you look at the film, it's important. It's important in once you also have more staff, the amount of individual film done at bigger clubs with more staff, it's a daily process. Where players may be doing 5 to 10 minutes a day of film on individual, on lines, and so on. And I think it's a big component, especially in a league like ours, Kwame, where you're playing everyone 4 to 5 times a year. That's what makes the CPL a very difficult league. It's not like you're playing everyone once at home, once away, and then, okay, off to the next guys. You're going to play them, you're going to play them again, play them 4th time, and then you're going to find them in the playoffs and play them a 5th and a 6th time. Right. And there's not many secrets there. So you really have to get into it as staff. You have to get into the video of the game to really see those smaller parts that maybe can be better. Maybe you got to look at maybe where you can take advantage of the opponent a little bit more, set pieces, different things. There's all those little nuances that come into it. So those are the important things, especially for us.
Yeah, and if you're talking about doing film like 3 to 4 times a week, like Kwame just said, is there like for you guys as a staff, is it mostly like, you know what, hey, today we're going to focus on this, and the type of film that you're doing then translates to the type of things that you're going to be doing on the pitch that day? So it's kind of like a consistent build, or is it more so individualistic stuff and potentially looking at just for certain players?
Yeah, so now what we have implemented is there's one day of the week where it's all individual type of things. Usually that's right after the game. And then after that, most of the film is just broken up into our principles of play. So into the different principles we have, and that stays consistent, because film isn't about showing all the things that went wrong, but it's also not showing all the things that were good. But for the most important thing to us is mostly showing the things that are going well and can be a little bit better. We're a team statistically, and if you look at last year, and we've already started with it this year, we enter the opponent's 3rd and their penalty area, at twice the rate of any team. But that means you have to be a little bit more clinical in that final part of the field, because that allows teams to get into lower blocks, more players be back there. So you're always looking at those small little details on how we can be better, maybe quicker, and getting that final shot off the goal, or if you're stuck, where the rotations are to get out. And relook at it. So those are the things that through your principles in the video, you're able to see over and over again.
So we're talking about coaches, and there's a difference in coaches in the CPL, but I want to talk about the national team coach, John Herdman, who obviously was able to flip Canada into a top 50 nation and one of the most exciting teams in the past 2 years in the world. So, I mean, how do you view his tactics as a coach? As obviously as a player, we watch our friends play on the team, and sometimes mostly as a fan, but obviously some like at a high level as well if you really understand the game. But as a coach, like, do you agree with it? Not even agree, but like, do you usually see what he's trying to do, what he's trying to implement on with the players and stuff like that? Like, I would have to ask Rich, what is Herdman trying to implement like this last game? Like, what did he want you guys to do? But are you able to tell right away when you watch the national team play?
Yeah, I think if you look at them through qualifying, and I think that's, the great thing about how difficult their qualifying was for the World Cup is it gave them a lot of games. If you look back at the beginning and all those games they were playing in the Caribbean islands and so on, that actually was to their advantage because it gave them an opportunity to work on a lot of different things and maybe in a less stressful environment. So tactically, they were able to work on things. As they got into the octagonal, let's say, in those games, one thing that was evident was, a good defensive structure. I think, tactically, it was a good defensive structure on one, how to press teams, how to trap teams in certain areas. And I think attacking, there was a lot of freedom. There's a lot of freedom for allow players to go. And when you have the likes of Kyle Aaron, Jonathan David, Alfonso Davies, Richie Laria, Tejan Buchanan, I think you can give those guys some freedom to express themselves going forward. And I think, that's kind of the common thing that we saw through qualification, at the World Cup. It was a little bit different. You're obviously playing different teams. And I think maybe if they had played a few more European teams in preparation, maybe that would have helped the guys a little bit more. But all around, we've played some good teams in that World Cup. And when you look at tournament football, it's all about details. The same way you've played in championship games and so on, it's all about details. It's about getting that first goal. It's about not getting scored on, and it's not easy to turn games in World Cup tournaments or any tournament that way. But if I look at overall, and what I've seen is a very good defensive structure and good freedom for the players that you have to be able to go forward and express themselves.
Definitely. And just obviously you talked about kind of how you guys have your philosophy and all this stuff. Just like purely just kind of thinking about it right now. You come up again, you have that Canadian team. We've got our way of playing, you've implemented it, and you come up against Croatia. Is that one that you're instantly looking at, okay, we're gonna try and, from a tactical standpoint, are you thinking, okay, we're gonna try and do what we can if things start to go awry? Like, at what point would you try and change tactics potentially, especially in like a World Cup game, if things start to go poorly?
Yeah, it's a tough question because it's the hypothetical question. I can tell you, if I was the coach, and this has nothing to do with Herdman, but I'd be playing my brand of football. So it's Croatia, it's Croatia. But of course, you need a good, rigid defensive structure. But I try and find a way to dominate the ball, be on the front foot, press high, and do all the fun things in the game. But that I'm saying today in a hypothetical situation. When you're inside the team, it's always easier to know. It's always easier to know the form of the players, who's doing well in certain situations, and then it's much easier. But from the outside, the only thing I could say is what I would do. If my team was that team that went to the World Cup, great. If my team going to the World Cup was forged in those players, and there was a difference in level, I'd still probably go and play football.
Well, talking about World Cup, obviously the women's national team is preparing for their World Cup. I mean, top 10 in the world, the Canadian women's national team. We actually watched their gold medal win in the Forge locker room. I remember the penalty shootout the penalty shootout was against the States, or was that the final?
No, the final was not against the States.
No,
the final was against Sweden.
They beat the US in a
beat
shootout.
The US in a shootout, yeah. So we watched the shootout, and then we watched the final as well at training. But they're preparing for their World Cup, and everyone obviously has high hopes. John Herdman coming from the women's national team to the men's national team. People thought it was obviously going to be a tough transition. Didn't know really what to expect because he did well in the women's game doesn't mean you're going to do well in the men's game, and vice versa, of course. But obviously the biggest news around is the whole the CBA collective bargaining agreement. We had conversations with guys on the national team and guys in the CPL, and me and Adam talked about, we're all for the women getting money, 100%. You deserve to get paid and deserve everything you need to prepare for a World Cup because you're representing our country. Like, you're the best 25 women in the country of Canada in the game that we have. And you guys just won an Olympic gold medal. So that testifies to itself. But the men, I think the biggest issue that we talked about was how the men approached this situation, and at the same time took a little shot at the CPL. Then I said something on one of our episodes, and I had one of the national team players message me privately about it, but I didn't personally like how they called, what is it called? A minor league, an amateur league or something like that? They called CPL a minor league. And people are saying it wasn't the CPL, but like, if it's not the CPL, then who is it? Because you're talking about CSB, and CSB only controls the CPL. I don't know like how you felt if you did read that, or if you did read the whole message. Because I read the message in its entirety, because I didn't just want to pick out that one line and be like, there's no context. But I read it in its entirety, and it still felt the same way towards me for someone that came from the CPL.
Yeah, obviously we saw that comment, and in our office we had a little bit of a chuckle, and I think I think a lot of people are not informed well of what's going on in Canadian soccer, and I think that's what it comes down to, and that could be Canada Soccer themselves not informing the players very well of the ins and outs of what's going on. I think what everyone has to understand is we're in a great place in Canadian soccer. We got teams playing in World Cups, both competing. We have a national league. We have more growth at every level. We have more money coming into the game than we've ever had, and we need to be on the right path, and everyone needs to be together on this because the future is bright. of course, and there's been just a lot of negativity around everything. National teams, those comments about the CPL. You need a national league, men's and women's. You need national leagues to develop the game. Otherwise, the game is random. The same way I talk about my coaching is I don't like random football. We like structures. So we're on the right path to getting an excellent structure in the game, and it's only going to get better. Maybe there's bumps along the way with that, but I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and maybe Canada Soccer has to do a better job of being more clear with all the players and everyone involved in how things are working currently in the soccer landscape. Because on my end and my knowledge, I think it's right now everyone is benefiting. Much better even financially than they were years ago.
Yeah, and I think like the one thing that you mentioned there that I believe is super key is the transparent side of it, right? I think that's the one problem area that I've seen in this whole conversation, because I don't think either side's being completely transparent, right? And I think that's where like sometimes these comments, then all of a sudden now they're like, oh, I don't know why you took that comment that way, and you're like, well, you framed it a certain way. And because you're not willing to be transparent about this thing, and the other side's not willing to be transparent, you're leaving everything to public perception.
Hello?
Bonnie.
Yeah. How are the kids?
They're good, man. They're growing.
I remember when they
To be honest, we're lucky my battery ran out, because I think I would have forgot them at school.
Oh wow. Then your wife would not hear the end of it.
School's only a block away, so I'm okay.
Did you walk?
Of course.
Okay, I was to say. Yeah, you can't put no more mileage on that Mercedes no more, because that's from. You still have it?
You got that right.
That is as old as that's older than your kids.
That is correct.
Wow. Oh man. Well, we only have a couple of questions left.
Yeah.
Of course, we would want to bring you back on in the middle of the season, obviously when more things are happening. But there's a couple of things we didn't want to touch on. The Canadian Championship, we spoke about it yesterday, Adam. Seeing TSS Rover sweeping Valor. We were saying it was good for the sport in general for Canada, because you see that stuff like in the Premier League, like Premier League teams losing to like League Two teams and stuff like that. Like what Wrexham was able to do to get to Sheffield United to the quarterfinals, and just seeing those kind of stories. Do you think it benefits Canadian soccer?
Yeah, I think it's the beauty of the cup competition, right? And those are the banana peel games for all teams that are playing at a higher level. You're always playing a team that really is playing the game of their season, right? So you always got to be careful, and that's why you have these results. And it was maybe the first one we've had, I think, from a League One type of team, but it probably won't be the last one we'll see as the years go on.
Yeah, well, I mean, we were talking about this earlier in our company meeting, but I think Vaughan actually beat Halifax.
Yes.
That first year, they went and won 1-0, but they went out on away goals.
Yes.
Which that team, I think Alistair was in that team, and there was a number of them in that team that was a really good side. But obviously for me, my brother played in the game. He was in the team of the week. It was super like exhilarating and awesome for myself personally to be able to go there and watch it. But the one thing that I think the addition of the CPL, and now with League One growing so much, every single year now there's a storyline coming out of the Canadian Championship with some sort of an upset. The very first year was Cavalry beating the Whitecaps. Then the next year it was Pacific beating the Whitecaps. And then even
who do the Whitecaps have this year now? Oh, they have York.
They play York now. Yeah,
York at York Stadium, so that could be interesting.
Yep. It definitely could be, because the Whitecaps. I mean, the Whitecaps are, I think, the reigning champs, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. But yeah, so it's creating more parity across and creating these different storylines, which is just exactly what you want to see. And even you guys taking Montreal right to penalty shootout last year, like it's phenomenal to sit there and watch. And it helps grow and helps everyone talk about the sport even more and more and more, because this competition sucked before when it was just the three of them.
100%.
Well, that's the most important thing is that there's more of a conversation around the game, and that's what we need. There's a lot more games being played at the professional level. There's a lot more games played at the Division 3, which is the League One that's across the country. And quite frankly, what we need more of is what you guys are doing as well, right? It's making sure that people are talking about this, and getting into depth on different topics, because a lot of our football sometimes is just a little bit of fluff of what the result was on the weekend or so on and so forth. But I think if we can shed some more light on some of these stories, what that's meant for TSS and their community and their fans. I didn't really get to see what the stand looked like at Swangard, but I'm pretty sure it
It was
was
about 2,500 people, man. It was a
There you go.
lot of people crammed in there. It was awesome.
More
so
than the
that-
Vancouver Whitecaps 2 game.
There you go. And that's a great story, right? That needs to be there. And like I said, we'll have more of these as the years go on, and maybe this competition is expanded as well with more teams.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would be the ideal thing. And then have League One Alberta coming in. I think there's talks about hopefully League One Atlantic kind of getting that region together, and the more and more you can spread it out, the better. It'd be great one day to have just like the local men's league, like they do in the Lamar Hunt Open Cup down south in the States, to be able to expand it like that. We're a long way away from that, don't get me wrong, but one day you can actually see the framework for it now, though, which is the best part.
And that's a great thing about the infrastructure, right? Like, we're talking about these new leagues, and remember, this is male and female, so it's happening on the female side. And I know they're going to have some type of national competition, I believe, between the League One Ontario, BC female things this year. As that grows, that creates a more competitive base, because going away from the men's side, going to the women's side, is we have some work to do. And I say
Big
that
time.
because we've traveled, and I've traveled quite a bit in the CONCACAF region. We just spent 2 weeks in Costa Rica as part of our preseason, and every day I turned the TV on, there was a professional women's game in Costa Rica being played. We trained at Alajuelense's training facilities every day. Their girls' youth academy was there training. We've done a great job as Canada and our national team, but the one thing we have to be aware of is CONCACAF is catching up, and all of these clubs who obviously have history, have rich tradition, there's a bigger infrastructure in the game, are pouring money into the female side as well. And I think as things are growing now, I think that's the natural next step is what we're going to see in the Canadian soccer infrastructure, is that there's going to be a shift towards the female game too. I don't know if that's in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years, because quite frankly, between the three of us, we don't have that money.
No, and that's
you
the
said
funniest.
it.
That's the funniest part about when you look at, like, I think what's interesting is seeing how it's going in CONCACAF and not including the States in it, because you can't, like, never catching them and their money, right? But we can't look at necessarily what the Europeans are doing either, because I don't think that those federations themselves are doing a whole lot different. But when you have PSG, who can fund whatever they want and can pour billions of dollars into it, that's where most of those youth team players are coming from for France. Same thing in England, where you've got the Man Uniteds, the Arsenal were on it so quick. They're the first ones to really invest in it. But Man City, how much they're investing in it. You're looking at those from clubs where they're billion-dollar entities. Like, we're not going to be able to keep up with that. So it's really interesting to kind of hear that, like, what are the other nations in CONCACAF doing? How can we try and get to that infrastructure? Because again, from our own standpoint, we are behind culturally, and we are behind the infrastructure side of those massive clubs down there.
The biggest thing we're behind on is we're years behind on the business side. We look at the television deals that exist in CONCACAF regions, and just the business and the money from the business side that goes into corporate sponsorships and so on. That's now starting to become a thing here. And we talked about it a little bit before, but CSB has done a great job with that, because you need people who know the business of corporate sponsorship, of building business and so on. And a lot of the people involved in that component have come with a great background there. And that's just starting to build. And that's building, with different successes. The men's national team has had an important component to play in that. But we're just at the beginning. So I think as those things grow, now you'll see the growth of the game at the different levels.
I always say the American side, you can't really America, and I guess North America, excluding Mexico, because soccer is not our predominant sport. Other people are more interested in watching hockey, basketball, and NFL. Whereas like in Europe, even though other places don't have the GDP that we have, they don't pour their money into all those other things. Maybe hockey if you're an Eastern European country, but everything else just goes into soccer. Like that's their only sport. Like people play other things for fun, but like their major sport where everybody is united together is football. Whereas in America, they're lucky because of how many people they have and their marketing and all that stuff. Like the capitalism in America is what makes the American national team have an advantage on us, and obviously the number of people. But people still, like if you were to say on average how many people watch the US men's national team, it's not a lot. Like it's certain pockets in America, but when you go to like the Midwest and stuff like that, the middle of America, those guys don't give a damn. Maybe St. Louis and Kansas City, but other than that, like after living in the Midwest, those guys like, oh, there's a soccer team coming and there's a stadium being built right 2 blocks away from them, and they'd be like, oh, I didn't even know there was a soccer team. So like people need to think that okay, America is only because of the capitalistic part and the business side is where America has most of the billionaires, of course, is the reason why America is where it is.
It's a massive market in itself, right?
Yeah.
Self-sustainable market, and obviously, you know, the growth of sport has gone through the franchise model, and it works in closed leagues when you're really trying to grow a business, and that's what MLS has been able to do in their first 25 years, because everyone sees MLS where it is today, but sometimes forgets in those first years there was 2 owners. Teams were folding. You know, every year there was a new team coming in, another one folding. In the early 2000s, I think it was early 2000s, they had to be saved by a fund company. You know, it's a little bit in behind of the story, and everything has skyrocketed since. So you know, you look at that, you look at the trajectory of what we're doing here, and will we reach MLS in the Canadian Premier League? I don't know. I don't know if I'll be around in the Canadian Premier League or wherever. Maybe they don't like me anymore.
That's our next question. Don't worry, we're gonna get to that one.
But the game's gonna grow. That's for sure. The game's gonna grow at all levels, and it just has to happen step by step. We can't have everything all at once. That's the tough thing, even though we want it.
So for you, obviously, this has been a big question, and I ask you all the time. I ask you probably every year. You're comfortable at Forge, and everybody knows that. You're a champion. You've done everything that needs to be done, except for win the Coach of the Year, which is wild to me. I'm gonna keep saying that, and I'll tweet One Soccer as many times as possible. But what are your goals? Like I knew I wanted to become a professional soccer player, but then when I became one, my goal was like, okay, now I want to play at the highest level, which whether it's in Europe or whether it was MLS. Like when you got to become a professional coach, did you think like a CPL, and then do you have like your goals as well? Like what are your goals?
I think you always have to, you know, whether you're a player, you're a coach, you're involved in the game, you have to have ambition. Ambition drives you to be better each and every day. You know, it's you use the word comfortable, and it's an easy word to use. But if I'm comfortable, I also don't care about winning. So I don't usually look at it and say, okay, this is a comfortable situation for me. You know, I've won. I can do what I want here. It's if you're ambitious, and I think that's what always drives me, because I think big. The game is endless in its opportunities, right? Until you reach the pinnacle, and we can argue if that's Real Madrid, if it's Manchester City, or so on. So I think you always have to think big in that way, and then bring yourself back to each and every day, and just do the work, do the good work, and everything usually in this game organically occurs. So yeah, of course, if something good were to come along, that makes sense professionally, also allows me to get the best out of myself in that situation. Yeah, it's normal that you want to have some upward movement. At the same time, there's always different challenges I put myself on every year, and that's a tough one, because we have had success. You know, we've been blessed to have success, excellent players in what we've done in these 4 years. But you continue to push yourself to find what that next level is. What can you tweak tactically? What can you do a little bit better? How can you make yourself better that allows the team to be better? And you continue to do that. And maybe I'm here for the next 10 years. Maybe they don't like me and I'm gone in a year, or, you know, maybe I'm somewhere else. That we never know. You know, I never looked at it in all my years at Sigma. I never looked at it and said, okay, I need to make a next step. I need to do this. I need to do that.
We got to make a new award, Coach of the Decade, because if you ain't gonna win Coach of the Year, then we got to do something. Like, come on.
When we talk
Adam
about
has a
goal
question
set, when we
for
talk
you.
about goal setting, right? Talk about goal setting, all stuff. What is it going to take to shave the beard? Is it winning Coach of the Year finally, and it comes off, or what?
Yeah, I don't know, and it's always interesting because everyone asks me that question. It really it's something. If it comes, it comes. Most importantly is, and it's okay, easy to say, but it's what the team does. You know, the awards,
What did I
MVPs,
say, Adam?
different things are, yeah, but they're voted on in different ways by different people and different people's opinions, right? That's what it comes down to, and that's the beauty of sport. Everyone sees
But
sport and
even the
politics a little
clock
bit
is
differently.
right twice a day, though. They got to be right sometime. Like, something has to give. Like, at some point, you have to, like, give credit where it's due. And that's just how I feel. I don't know. Maybe it's just me with a chip on my shoulder, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, but when you look at it and going back to the question there on the goals, it's, you know, next year provides an excellent opportunity to get back to Champions League football. You know, this is a club for 4 years that's competed in CONCACAF in each of our 4 years. You know, because of the restructuring of CONCACAF in the tournament, although we're champions, there's no CONCACAF this year. And Kwame knows it. It was a big thing for the players. Looking forward to those games, those different opponents, different environments. So that's something that's really missing from the group this year, and I think that's that motivation and that we need, because the toughest thing in this game, I'll tell you guys, it's remotivating players to do it again. It's not easy, and when you look across sport, and since we've come to, you know, the ideas of league parity, of salary caps, and so on, you know, teams winning consistently, it doesn't happen a lot. And one of the biggest challenges is always, you know, getting those players energized again. Somehow we've found an ability to do that over these few years, but we have to continue doing that. And this year, our extra little motivation that we have is to be back playing Champions League football next year.
It's a great goal to have. Yeah. So we're gonna have some fun talk. We have some fun questions. Adam, you're gonna hit him with the first one, the quick hitters. We'll give you quick hitters, and then a last question that is probably like an in-depth one, but we'll start with these fun ones. So Adam, first one.
So obviously, this is a topic that comes up all the time in world football, but kind of growing up, you talk about the mid-2000s English Premier League. You taking Paul Scholes, Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard.
3 English players, huh?
It's just one of those topics. I mean, you can throw Xavi and Iniesta.
Paul Scholes.
Yes.
Oh wow! I
Massive.
thought.
Massive.
Huh? He was the big winner in the 2000s, no?
Yeah.
He won a lot more than the other two did, but for me, that was my idol growing up. That's who I grew up watching. So it's pretty typically my answer too. And I like to fight anyone who. Kwame normally just throws out Gerrard and Lampard, and I'll just yell out Scholes every other time we do this.
I'll go with Scholes.
Okay, and then right now we're saying Mbappe or Erling Haaland.
Haaland.
Because we were the funny thing is in the beginning we both said Haaland, and then we saw Mbappe in the World Cup, and we're like, damn. And then you just see what he's doing right now for City. It's like, God damn, all right.
Well, I mean, you know, I like myself a good number 9.
Yeah, efficiency. I told I think the same
the hardest
thing.
position. It's the hardest position.
And who is your favorite soccer player? I know who it is, but you gotta tell this guy.
Of all time?
Yes.
You know who it is?
Yeah. Didn't you say, wasn't it Zidane?
That is correct.
Yeah. And explanation why he picked Zidane.
Yeah. Poetry on the field. You know, it's like listening to classical music, watching him go around the pitch.
Do you think that we've lost the art of the old school number 10? I guess not old school, but like that generation number 10, like Zidane, Ronaldinho, Rivaldo, those type of 10s. You don't see those type of players in world football anymore.
Yeah, I think the last of the true number 10s was Juan Ramon Riquelme.
Not Ozil?
Sorry?
I said not Mesut Ozil, because he was kind of that similar type, more elegant than athletic.
Ozil came around, and why? Because football has become more physical in its nature, And I don't mean in the physical nature of, challenges and so on, the running that's involved. The game is very transitional. And unless you're Manchester City or so on, who can keep the ball forever, the game is very transitional. And coaches want guys who can make those high intensity runs in both areas of the pitch. And I think there we've lost a little bit of the artistic player that we had before. And also, and it's something that's important for youth coaches, sometimes we don't like coaching the artistic player because he's a little bit different. He's the player in training amongst the 20 that's doing things a little bit differently. And as a youth coach, you always have to be wary about that and understand how to bring him in the group and keep him going, because it's easy to put those players to the side. But those are the players that people want to pay a lot of money to watch and also want to pay a lot of money to buy.
Definitely. And just kind of looking at that, obviously, what was kind of your favorite, I guess, era of football to watch, like growing up? Is it now? Is it, the kind of the 2010s where you had Real Madrid dominating, the 2000s, 90s, whenever?
I think everything's different. I'll go away from the early 90s when the goalkeeper took the back pass. That was quite different when you watch those things. But I think if you look past from the 2000s onwards, we've seen a lot of different styles and a lot of different things come into play. Obviously, Barcelona and their emergence with Guardiola, changed the game, shaped the game and the thoughts of people, and everyone tried to mimic it. Not an easy thing to do. Then you look at a wave of pressing football and kind of the rock and roll Jurgen Klopp and so on. And I think that's been the great thing we've seen. We've seen all these different contrasting styles. You look at Atletico Madrid and Diego Simeone, and I have no clue how long has he been there? More than 10 years.
11.
So
whatever.
11.
How for 11 years he gets guys to buy into to an ultra low block system. But that's been effective and it works. So we've seen all these different types of ways of doing things in league football, in tournament football. So I think the great thing is just the constant change tactically that we've seen over the last 20 years, I think has been great. I don't know if there's been a period of this is the best football, but I can say Guardiola and Barcelona got close to it.
Okay, and then on to probably the last quick hitter before we let you go, because I know you want to enjoy your birthday with your kids, even though they're probably playing video games right now. What do you think is more difficult, to win the league on a consistent basis or to win the Champions League? To win, like, say, the Premier League or to win the Champions League?
Toughest thing is to win Champions League. Champions League is tournament football. It's about a game.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The consistency in the league, and it all depends what league we're talking about, because even in the Premier League, we're going to say 4 teams are going to win it. Unless lightning strikes and Leicester wins and everyone else is bad, it's 4 teams that are going to compete for it. Right? So at the beginning of the year, whether we like it or not, those are the 4 teams. And the Premier League's the deepest league probably in the world, along with Bundesliga, who's got some parity, but we also know unless Bayern Munich trips, they're winning there. If PSG doesn't trip, they're winning. Champions League is tough because you can be doing everything right, and it's a matter of one game that goes wrong for you. And we've seen it with Manchester City the last few years. We've been playing exceptional football, winning Premier League titles, and they still can't make that jump. And then you got Real Madrid, who could be in an off season in La Liga. And Ancelotti has him firing on all cylinders in tournament football. I think Champions League is a tough one. PSG has thrown a lot of money at it.
They've certainly tried. And obviously looking forward, you got City, Real Madrid next. Is that going to be kind of like the tie of the year? Is that what everyone's is that what you're looking forward to watching?
Yeah, of course. You have a team that plays extraordinary football in City and a team that just knows how to win in Real Madrid, especially in these games. So you can flip a coin, you can flip Kwame and see which way we're going to land here.
I'm kind of unbalanced right now with one boot on one side, so you're going to land to the right every time. Yeah, but Bobby, my last question to you before we let you go, I was going to say, what do you think is one of the most misunderstood things about your coaching style or your personality, like all that combined, like the person that you are. Because a lot of, obviously, you are an intimidating person, and we're not gonna get past that. Like we know this. People that know you, like, yeah, you can't. People think like they can't go talk to you. But like, what do you think is something that you've heard from your players, your staff, that other people have said about you, but you found like it's totally not true?
I think first and foremost, what have we been talking for here? Close to 2 hours?
It's been
Nah,
pretty
we
close.
took a break. It was an hour. It was an hour, and then now we started again. Hour 15.
An hour. We can talk football all day, Kwame.
Yeah, I
That's,
know. That's why I'm like, this guy's his birthday. I don't want to bother him on his day.
That we can go. To be honest, I don't know what may be a misconception. You know, I know you've just said one there that maybe I'm an intimidating guy, but I think I'm ready to talk all the time and discuss things. Sometimes I use the Socratic method and ask questions, and you know that in meetings, and try and stimulate your mind or G sometimes in the locker room when there's different situations, both football and life related. I think that's where I stump the guys sometimes. But yeah, from a football, I think you see what it is, not only from what the eye sees, but from the statistics show. And we've been consistent in these 4 years of being the team of playing football and sticking with it. And the league has changed. The CPL has changed quite a bit. If we look at it last year it was the most defensive football we've seen across the board.
There wasn't a lot of goals last year.
There was a big difference in all of the statistic measures, apart from Forge last year with all the other teams. And I think that came down to a point here in year 4. And when you really want to win, the easiest way to win is to play negative football. That's the easiest way to win, always. Playing a brand of football that needs a lot from the players on the ball. That means you need to make decisions constantly. That means you need to play with pace. You need to do things. That's tiring on a player. You can tell me chasing a ball can be tiring, but sometimes it's the most effective. Every team is going to have 2-3 chances. Even the most negative teams in the world in a game will have 3 chances to score goals. So if you do it right, it could be very effective. And I think that's where our league went to last year. It'll be, interesting to see how things are this year. With teams, some new coaches, a lot of turnover in the league where things go. But football wise, we not remain the same. We just try and keep on adding levels to what we're doing. And when you do that, sometimes it takes some time to click amongst the players. It's not an easy task. But yeah, other than that, Kwame, I don't know what's really said about me off the field.
You're in your own world. We also got to get Costa. I know that guy's if you're unreachable, yeah, Costa's the busiest guy on earth. So you got to get in his ear and tell him to hop at least for 30 minutes. We'll get straight to the point so we could talk about his whole jump in
he just got a little busier.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. So at least 30 minutes. But what was I gonna say? I mean, yeah. Thank you for coming on. I mean, we could have talked soccer all day, but don't want to take up much more of your time. And yeah, hopefully to see you guys get some points, because I know I always say we because I'm still a Forge family, so I always say we, but hopefully you guys get some points. And we always know that you guys start off poorly, so it's all right. There's no
poorly.
stress.
You start off slow. You just start off slow. It's a slow build.
Yeah, peak at the right time every year.
Hopefully we can keep that tradition going.
Yeah, because we finished in first in 2021 and we ended up losing the league. So sometimes I look at it, I'm like, won the league 3 times without playing at home in the finals. Maybe there's this. It might be something, but now there's more on the line, right?
There's more on the line, yes. Finishing first gets you into Champions League, so there's a little bit more to play, but it's 28 games. The one thing I know is the season goes up and down, and the first 5 games will be a lot different looking than what the last 10, 15 games will be.
100%. Thank you, Bobby, again. Happy birthday. Tell the family I said hello, and yeah, thank you for hopping on. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
so
guys.
much, Bobby.
Thanks
Really
a lot.
appreciate it.
Keep up the great work, guys. We'll talk soon.
Will do. See you.
Thanks.